Phoenix Knights. Chapter 548. The golden men around Jia had been melted, and they were waving their long swords to support themselves. If they were hit by the fire meteor, they would definitely be annihilated. Chunrui discovered Obsidian's intention, and he scolded secretly. Sonic boom suddenly sounded. He had cast the flying secret skill to block in front of Jia. He pointed with North Sea in his hand, and a huge black hole appeared in front. This black hole had a terrifying gravitational force. The flame giant and the streams of light in the sky were swallowed one after another. However, the warning in Chunrui's heart quickly sounded because the demigod power absorbed by star devouring was already full. Although it had been absorbed by star conversion these days, it was only a small part of it. Now, coupled with these turbulent peak stage of the demon overlord power, the absorption speed couldn't keep up with the devouring. After a while, it was almost full. As soon as the black hole disappeared, the fire meteor behind had already flown over quickly. Boom, boom, boom! When the smoke and dust dissipated, a large number of cracks and drag marks had appeared on the ground, but they gradually returned to their original state under the effect of the territory. At the end of the drag marks, the figure who had been protecting Jia was still standing. The cloak on his body had been annihilated by the impact force, revealing the dazzling armor. He had a shield in his hand. It was a big, dark golden round shield with quaint patterns, giving people an indestructible feeling. This round of raging fire meteors did not leave any trace of damage on this big shield. Obsidian looked a little familiar with this shield. His heart moved as he thought of something, but he quickly rejected it. Aguile should be the Beelzebub royal family. If there is, it should be a mask instead of a shield. Moreover, the legendary shield is still a little different from the one in front of me in terms of appearance. Obsidian didn't know that this was actually half of the shield. Before he could change his mind, Chunrui had already launched a counterattack. Despite the protection of the demon shield, which blocked all the attacks for Jia, Chunrui still suffered a lot of internal injuries under this violent shock and impact. He was now relying on the Royal Star Transformation and all the buffs to barely compete with Obsidian, but these buffs had a time limit. If he kept moving, he would definitely lose, so he must fight back. Northsea's light purple sword body burst out countless meteor-like lights, spreading forward in a fan shape. Some newly formed flame giants were penetrated and annihilated. The spreading meteors drew a beautiful arc and converged into a huge sword shape. With a swoosh, the great sword flew toward Obsidian with terrifying speed and power. Obsidian had a strong sense of crisis. He inserted the purple sword into the ground, and several red halos appeared. They kept rotating and wrapped his whole body. The great sword was fleeting, and a huge sword shape appeared in the territory of the fallen fire world. The territory power within the range was cleared into a vacuum. In the shock, Obsidian's figure appeared again, but his position had been pushed dozens of meters away. The protective halo disappeared without a trace, and the armor on his body was almost fragmented. There was a terrifying crack in the chest armor, and blood kept oozing out. The black flame wings behind him also became dim. His face was full of disbelief and horror. This is the attack of the light element power. Such a powerful and pure light element power. Who are you? The light element and the dark element naturally restrained each other. The light element power was the nemesis of the fallen fire world. If it was any other attack of the same level, it was impossible to cause such damage to Obsidian. The demon realm was a world of dark elements. The foundation of the demon's training was not limited to the dark element. It could be any element of the earth, water, fire, and wind. The only thing that couldn't be the light element was the light element. Those who had the light element power, especially this level of power, could only be visitors from the human world. Could Aguile, who I thought was a Beelzebub royal family, be, in fact, this blow was the effect of the supplementary skill of the quasi-artifact, North Sea, flow back to origin. It had the sword chi damage of both water and light elements, but Obsidian's guess was coincidentally correct. Aguile was really not a Beelzebub royal family. Shinrei's mind turned sharply. He slowly flew in front of Obsidian and changed into another voice. Your Royal Highness Regent, my friend, you haven't recognized me yet? Obsidian had just recalled the purple sword, and he couldn't help but be shocked when he heard this sentence. He was even more moved than when he heard Isabella's voice previously. You are Charles! Shinrei slowly moved his hand to the visor on his face, and a familiar face appeared in front of Obsidian. Obsidian originally had a hunch when he saw Isabella who came back from the dead, but he didn't expect to see this face here. Moreover, he is the fiancé of the Dark Moon Princess Royal. Fundraising. Black potion. Crack artifact. Fake death. Even though Obsidian knew that he couldn't be distracted at this time, his attention was still attracted by this shocking truth. At this moment, he suddenly had the illusion of the stars shattering. No! It was not an illusion. The stars in the entire sky of the fallen flame world burst apart, emitting the brilliance of a supernova. Behind the magnificence was ashes and smoke. Those flame giants who had just been reborn were all turned into powder. Star explosion was the strongest group skill of the Royal Star Transformation. With the deepening of Chunrei's understanding and the doubling of the skill power of dual training, the power had a qualitative improvement. This blow shattered the territory power of the entire fallen flame world, and Obsidian himself also suffered an extremely violent impact. Although the territory did not collapse, its power was greatly weakened. It could not be restored to its strongest state in a short time. Even the flame giants who besieged Jiao with extremely fast rebirth speed would have their strength greatly reduced. Your Royal Highness Regent, let me, your old friend, give you the last gift. The voice of Charles sounded, and Northsea stabbed straight at Obsidian's throat. Although Star Explosion did not cause Obsidian to be seriously injured, it weakened the territory power more, but it made the wounds caused by flow back to origin burst out. The most terrible thing was that the poison in his left hand could no longer be suppressed, and it began to wander all over his body. With a roar, the purple sword attacked without hesitation. Shinrei launched the remaining instant transmission and appeared behind Obsidian. Obsidian quickly caught this sneak attack. The purple sword that seemed to be attacked with all his strength was inconceivably retracted, and he turned around to stab with the sword. This sword stabbed the target firmly. The dazzling armor could not stop the sharpness of the purple sword, and it was penetrated. However, there seemed to be a stronger protection in the armor. Before this sword could break through the layer of protection, a surprising change happened to Obsidian. Charles' entire body suddenly exploded. His body exploded into countless flying flies, and his sword suddenly stabbed in the air. Demonic Flies Transformation! God-eating mask. As the biggest enemy of the Beelzebub royal family, Obsidian, who was a member of the Lucifer royal family, recognized this secret technique of the mortal enemy royal family at a glance. His pupils suddenly shrank. According to the previous understanding, it is easy to explain that while Beelzebub has the God-eating mask. But now, isn't Charles a human? The light element power just now is the best explanation. Nero also said that his body of light blessing is the elite royal bloodline of the two human empires. How can a human possess and use the secret technique of the 7 artifacts? God-eating mask. This has completely exceeded the cognitive range of the entire demon realm. In a split second, the scattered demonic flies did not escape far away, but they quickly wrapped around Obsidian. Before Obsidian could regain his strength, he had returned to his human form and tightly hugged Obsidian's body from behind. Obsidian caught a glimpse of the God-eating mask on Shinrei's face. As he was about to instinctively move in horror, he suddenly felt danger in front of him. However, his body was hugged, and the paralysis of the toxin made it impossible for him to dodge. A lightning-like sword light pierced through his heart. The speed and power of this sword were very strong. Not only Obsidian, but also the body of Chunrei, who was hugged from behind, was penetrated. Obsidian looked at the sword hilt in his heart incredulously. This sword hilt was covered with delicate patterns, and the tail was a purple gem. The sword edge outside the body was in the shape of two back-to-back angels. The sword blade had completely penetrated into his heart. "Sword of fallen angel!" Obsidian roared wildly. Jia in the distance also looked horrified. When Qinrui launched the star explosion, the sword of fallen angel had left her hand uncontrollably. Then, in a split second, the process of Qinrui's attack, demonic fly's transformation, confinement, and piercing through two people with the sword of fallen angel had been completed. Obsidian felt that his soul was rapidly splitting and disintegrating, and the power of his whole body was rapidly flowing away as if the power in his flesh and blood was sucked up by this terrifying sword. He couldn't help but be terrified, soul-searing. The special power of the sword of fallen angel. "Qinrui!" Jia screamed heartbreakingly, and rushed toward this side frantically. The newborn flame giant in front of her was slashed into several pieces by the power she burst out. "Don't come over!" Qinrui shouted, and huge vines appeared on the ground, tightly hugging the two people who were pierced. "Qinrui? That is, the human financial officer!" Obsidian's soul power was quickly disintegrated by the soul searing, and he was trying his best to resist the power of the sword of fallen angel. When he heard this sentence, his nerves that were almost numb because of the shock were agitated again. "Who the hell are you?" "It doesn't matter who I am, Obsidian. You have lost. I am the master of the fallen angel empire. How can I lose to you rebels?" Obsidian gritted his teeth and burst out his power. The vines outside shattered one after another. Qinrui's facial features were bleeding, and the armor of the royal star transformation also cracked, but it still held him tightly. "Winner takes all. Don't you even have the courage to admit this? Thanks to the fundraising funds you have worked hard to raise, the funds for the development of the Dark Moon, including the current weapons and equipment, mostly come from this huge sum of money. Josh is my man, so is Sikali. The 4 estates have been out of your control long ago." These words were like a heavy punch that almost collapsed Obsidian's mind. In an instant, he had understood a lot of things. The reason why the Dark Moon has today is because of this man. He should be the most critical figure. From the time the human, Qinrui, appeared in the Dark Moon to now, it has been less than 3 years. It is just a short 3 years. This is a great plan. There have been countless twists and turns in it, causing me, the Regent King, to walk into the design trap step by step. Now, whether it is the human, Beelzebub, or rebellion, these are not important. With your wisdom and ability, why did you choose the Dark Moon? She can't compare with me in any aspect. Obsidian shouted hysterically. Why do you work so hard for the Dark Moon? I can give you 10 times or 100 times what Jia can give you. Whether it is a beauty, power, or wealth. Qinrui burst out with all his strength to control the struggling Obsidian. His ears and nose were already bleeding from the surging power. He shouted angrily. "Stupid woman! If you don't want me to die now, stand there and don't move!" This sentence was for Jia, who was rushing over. Her hand holding the sword hilt was bleeding from the shock of her own surging power, but she finally obediently did not approach again. Princess Royal Highness's usually indifferent face was already full of tears. She tried her best to control her trembling body. There was an indescribable pain in her purple eyes. This kind of look, this kind of emotion, is by no means what a political marriage can have. Obsidian suddenly understood something, and an unprecedented strong unwillingness surged in his heart. Just for this absurd reason? For this damn woman, for the unnecessary and ridiculous feelings, this amazing man can help her subvert an empire at the cost of his life. It's ridiculous. In fact, there are still many secrets in this. The story was not like this at the beginning, but as many plots slowly developed and changed. Until now, it was really like this. No matter how ridiculous it was, it happened, and it was close to the end. Don't be happy too early. You will die earlier than me. Obsidian gritted his teeth and said. Jia doesn't dare to approach now. It must be because Qinrui is afraid that I still have the strength to perish together with him. I'm afraid that I will implicate my woman. But this human seems to have forgotten one thing, which is strength. If the human is inferior to me, she will definitely be the first to be annihilated due to the effect of soul searing. At that time, I will break free from the bondage and kill Jiao with my last strength. This is the only hope of winning at present. In terms of physique, strength, and endurance, this human is not my opponent. The final victory still belongs to me, Obsidian. Lucifer. Chinray didn't talk nonsense. He just used all his strength to imprison Obsidian's body. After a long time, Obsidian found that something was wrong. The opponent's binding power did not weaken because of soul searing, but it was getting stronger and stronger. Obsidian himself couldn't hold it anymore. Most of his soul was lost, and the toxin that lost the suppression of power also began to spread throughout his body. He couldn't help but be shocked. Impossible! Are you not affected by soul searing at all? Let alone the body of light blessing of the human royal family, even a demigod can't be immune. Obsidian suddenly thought of an incredible possibility, and a cold sweat suddenly broke out. If it was before this battle, he would never have such a ridiculous assumption. However, too many unimaginable accidents happened today. The most impossible thing became a possible existence instead. Only one kind of person can be unaffected by soul searing. The owner recognized by the sword of fallen angel. Chapter 549. In an instant, Obsidian suddenly realized, if this assumption is true, then this seemingly lose-lose situation is actually a trap. Chenrui only suffered an ordinary sword wound, and the power lost in Obsidian's flesh and blood will continuously replenish and strengthen the owner of the sword of fallen angel, so Chenrui's power has not weakened, but it is getting stronger and stronger. The ridiculous thing is that I still want to use the protracted war to exchange for the last hope, but it is equivalent to taking the initiative to fall into the opponent's trick. Isn't the sword of fallen angel always in the hands of Jia? Judging from the distance of Jia and her performance just now, this sword, perishing together, should not be controlled by her. Yes, this is sword controlling. Another characteristic of the sword of fallen angel. Obsidian felt a deep sense of powerlessness in his heart. His soul was on the verge of dissipating, and his mind began to blur. Are you really the sword of fallen angels? Not only the sword of fallen angel, but also the god-eating mask, or that shield. What kind of enemy is this? A dilapidated dark moon estate can actually become an existence that can compete with the entire empire. I came to crusade with all the power of the empire, but I ended up like this. The empire that originally belongs to me is about to change owners. This battle will be recorded in the history of the demon realm, and the name Obsidian. Lucifer will become a shameful loser. I'm not willing. Let's die together! Obsidian roared wildly like the final radiance of the setting sun. The originally extremely thin territory suddenly disappeared, and a strong light burst from his dim eyes. Chenrui was taken aback. A transparent protective shield appeared around him, wrapping him in obsidian. The soldiers in the battlefield below saw that the flames in the sky disappeared, and Obsidian, Jia, and Aguile appeared again. The sword of fallen angel was inserted in Obsidian's chest and penetrated Aguile behind. It was obviously Princess Royal who used the artifact to deliver the most fatal blow. In the next blink of an eye, Regent Obsidian's body suddenly exploded. Princess Royal Jia was blown far away by the force of the explosion and fell to the ground. Despite the isolation of the protective shield, the power of the explosion was too strong. Shay's injuries worsened, and she was severely injured, but she didn't seem to realize the pain at all. She flew into the air frantically, then she saw that the two figures had turned into ashes, leaving only the sword of fallen angel with a faint light floating in the air. Jia felt as if her heart had fallen into a bottomless abyss, and there was no longer any joy of winning. She couldn't even hear any extra sounds, as if everything had lost its meaning. At the same time, her greatest enemy was also annihilated. After this enemy disappeared, she had become the biggest winner, but if she could start all over again, she would rather be the loser. Between the Empire and him, Jia, who had always regarded fulfilling her father's last wish as her only goal in life, chose the latter without any hesitation for the first time. Similarly, Isabella, who was hugging Olifius behind the little black horse, was also stunned. Her eyes behind the blood-stained veil were frozen in the air, and a faint dead gray appeared in her blue eyes. A colorful light suddenly appeared in the direction of the explosion and recondensed into the resplendent figure, but the broken armor had become translucent, faintly showing signs of disappearing. Jia's and Isabella's eyes lit up at the same time. Jia couldn't care less about the public's gaze. She hugged the resurrected man tightly. She felt that everything in the world had been resurrected and was full of vitality again except for the ambitious and ruthless person who had been truly annihilated. "I'm fine. Now raise the sword." A tired voice sounded in Jia's ear. Although Chunrui wanted to stay in her arms and not get up, he knew that it was not the time. The sword of fallen angel automatically flew into Jia's hands. Jia didn't ask any unnecessary words. She held Chunrui with one hand and raised the sword high with the other. The artifact emitted a dazzling light that covered the entire battlefield. There was no need for unnecessary words or threats. From the sound of the first weapon falling to the ground, the sound of throwing away weapons quickly sounded in the battlefield as if it was infected. Even the Obsidian Legion in the Middle Army was no exception. Distant mountains. A huge vortex suddenly appeared out of thin air, and several figures flew out. The leader was Stiller. Her originally old face looked more haggard. Beside her were Disjaro, Barocco, and others. These demon overlords of the capital army were all seriously injured, especially the Dragon Rider Legion commander, Salgar. He was almost dying, but fortunately, there were no casualties. It was Stiller who used the power of burning her life just now. With the power of everyone, she finally broke through a gap and escaped from that strange battlefield. This battle was too frustrating. Fortunately, Salgar risked his life and joined forces with Barocco to eliminate Pegasus, who had turned into an undead. Then, when the rest of the people entangled with Paglio and others, Stiller opened a gap and escaped with everyone. Although the opponent was already one person short, the price paid by Stiller's side was also quite high. Almost everyone's combat power had fallen to the bottom. In this state, it was impossible to resist the Poison Dragon and Emerald Dragon. The Poison Dragon must have caught up. Now there was only one way to escape. "Wait! What's that?" Disjaro cried out in surprise. Stiller and others also saw the light in the air of the distant wilderness battlefield. With everyone's eyesight, they could naturally see what Princess Royal was holding high in her hand. On the ground below, almost everyone lowered their heads and knelt on one knee. There was no Regent Obsidian, no stubborn resistance, only 4 words: the overall situation is settled. A powerful fluctuation suddenly came from behind. Stiller turned around abruptly, and she saw the figures of Paglio and Crobolus appearing in the air. Immediately afterward, the Poison Dragon's careless voice sounded. "Little girl, don't be nervous. It is obvious that our battle is over." The demon overlords looked at each other. Stiller, who was called a little girl, smiled bitterly. She finally converged her power and flew toward the battlefield slowly. At this time, the space in the center of the battlefield began to distort like ripples. A gap cracked open, and 2 awkward figures flew out crookedly. One was a burly bald man wearing a beggar outfit that was almost naked. His body was emitting purple and green electric sparks, swaying from time to time. The other woman's clothes were relatively intact, but her originally delicate face was bruised and swollen. Especially her hands, they were hanging softly as if they were dislocated. There were 3 strange diamond-shaped marks on this woman's forehead, which were actually exactly the same as Olifius. As soon as she came out of the space, she seemed to sense something. She couldn't care less about her embarrassment, and looked in the direction of the little black horse in surprise. There, Isabella was holding the unconscious Olifius in her arms. "That girl!" Before the woman finished speaking, a cold snort came from midair, and the figure of a beautiful woman with glasses suddenly flashed. At the same time, a huge figure appeared above the woman. This was a translucent giant. He punched the woman down from midair, and he stomped down fiercely after landing. One stomp, two stomps. The ground kept shaking, and a huge human-shaped pit soon appeared. The bald man wanted to stop the giant, but the beautiful woman with glasses pointed the magic wand in her hand. The electric sparks on the bald man's body began to turn into electric arcs. Zzz! The smell of burnt flesh spread, making the few demon overlords who flew over shudder. Too violent. Too terrifying. It's simply domineering. Everyone understood why the giant dragon had called this beautiful bespectacled woman a crazy woman, but no one dared to say anything. Two giant dragons of the peak stage of the demon overlord. The black dragon was flattened like a pancake. The blue dragon, who was born to control the wind element, was actually roasted into coke by lightning spell. This is beyond the normal scope of magic. It is beyond the scope of normal people. It is also beyond the scope of normal dragons. Who dares to provoke? The one who felt the most was Master Poison Dragon. The complacency of fighting 7 alone, self-thought, had long disappeared. He swallowed the words in his heart with difficulty. If it weren't for a human sacrificing his body to deal with this crazy woman, I'm afraid my fate will be 100 times more miserable than these two dragons. Fortunately. After a while, the giant and the electric arc disappeared. The cold voice of the beautiful woman with glasses sounded. If you dare to talk again, don't even think about leaving. I just happen to have 2 less experiment subjects. The blue dragon Danielle nodded desperately like a chicken pecking rice. He barely came to the human-shaped pit below and got the black dragon Julia out. Julia, who was almost trampled into a pancake, still wanted to struggle to say something, but Danielle covered her mouth silently. The blue dragon didn't dare to look back. He slowly rose into the air and flew away. The 7 demon overlords of the Capital Coalition army looked at each other, and finally bowed down in the brilliance of the sword of Fallen Angel. The artifact that had always refused to recognize obsidian had chosen Jia. Then the true empress of the capital would be born. This was not only a surrender to the owner of the artifact and the empire orthodoxy, but also the surrender of the power owned by Jia. Jia's firm voice echoed on the battlefield. The usurper has been wiped out by the will of the artifact, and the empire is about to usher in a new life. I, Jia, Lucifer, swear in the name of the artifact to forgive all the deceived followers of Obsidian. I will lead you and the entire fallen angel empire to true prosperity and strength. The soldiers cheered and stood up. Jia's vow to let bygones be bygones made these people feel relieved. The dark moon's obvious strength and brilliance made the lords and soldiers believe that the entire fallen angel empire could move towards prosperity under the rule of Jia. Led by Josh and some ambitious people, the slogan, "Long live the Empress," was shouted. Although there was no official coronation, in the hearts of the soldiers, Jia was already the undisputed ruler of the fallen angel empire. The light of the sword of fallen angel gradually disappeared. Jia held Shinrui and landed on the ground, then the sword of fallen angel suddenly disappeared. Jia seemed to have used some secret method to keep it. Shinrui, who had released the royal star transformation state, had no time and energy to explain. He held his heavy eyelids and glanced at Jia. Jia nodded slightly. Their tacit understanding was expressed in silence. The little black horse ran over and rubbed its face affectionately against Shinrui. Shinrui touched its head. Isabella, who was holding Oliphius in her arms, stood not far away and watched quietly. She did not come over. Shinrui felt the faint gentle gaze and seemed to want to go over. The fairy dragon Rala had already appeared beside Shinrui and held his arm. There was a fluctuation in the space, and the two disappeared. At this time, a blurred voice sounded nearby. "Damn it! Which bastard did it? Stabbing me in the butt while I was asleep? If I find out..." Pa! His head had been knocked hard. A certain master was about to turn around and scold, but when he saw his madam and who was frowning, he quickly closed his mouth obediently. Chapter 550. Shinrei opened his eyes in a daze. He seemed to have had a beautiful dream just now. A long and wonderful dream. In the dream, as a male pig-trotter, he hugged women on his left and right, making love non-stop. He tried the secret of the jade room one by one, and he had a great time. Sometimes it was a female general, sometimes it was a little maid, and sometimes it was a fake silly lady. From time to time, it was someone's aunt, the future empress, and even the noble empress. This kind of crystal harem with happiness and sexual bliss was simply the biggest dream of every otaku. He wouldn't exchange it even if he became a demon. The scene in the room gradually became clear, and then he felt his limbs were numb. He saw a beautiful body lying on his left and right sides. On the left was Athena with short red hair lying on his chest. Her even breathing could imagine her beautiful and quiet face, and her slightly wheat-colored naked skin exuded attractive elasticity and heat. On the right was Rala with purple hair sleeping on his arm. Her regular glasses had already been taken off, and her delicate and perfect face was flushed. Lying on her side, her plump chest was squeezed out deeper ravine than usual. The pink buds at the tip were like delicate flower buds. Shinrei's mouth was dry when he saw this. It was difficult to connect this beautiful woman who could make all men's hearts beat faster with the violent man who ravaged the dragon. Shinrei recognized that this was the bedroom of Rala in the Rainbow Valley. The obscene smell in the bedroom that had not completely dissipated fully explained the passion that had happened before. It turned out that the dream of hugging women on both sides was real. At least, Athena and Rala were real, and Kia might also have a share, but the two empresses and Miss Intelligence were really dreaming. Wait! Rala and Athena? This could be regarded as a welfare day when the Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day came at the same time. Fairy Miss Long was generally used to eating alone. She rarely accompanied him with others like this, but the little maid liked to cut the line from time to time for a threesome. In terms of relationship, Rala and Athena were the best, followed by Inni and Betty. When Rala first came to the Dark Moon, she almost left feeling wrong. It was Athena who persuaded her to come back. The two were good sisters. They were indeed like sisters. They were both very broad-minded. Shinrei hugged the two beloved women, and there was a strong sense of accomplishment in his heart. This achievement even far exceeded the feeling of bringing down obsidian. He was suddenly very grateful to a certain space administration for arranging his transmigration. If he had not come to this plane, he would still be a mediocre otaku on Earth. How could he have such a colorful life? At the same time, he also had to thank the demon realm custom of sexual bliss, which made the dream of the Crystal Palace of the otaku come true. However, the Crystal Palace was not so easy to build. There was the danger of being smashed by a hatchet at any time. It was already the blessing of Demon God and Demon God's sister to be able to realize the scale in the dream. As for the legion of dozens or hundreds in novels or ACG, he didn't even dare to think about it. In another world it was said that the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan had ascended with 3,000 women. He was simply a worshipping god. Even if the legend was true, it varied from person to person. Pengzu had sex until he was 800 years old. The Yellow Emperor had ascended with 3,000 women. How could the handsome NBA player Chamberlain have ascended with 20,000 women before he was 70 years old? Some people said it was the difference between a charlatan and a pervert. Some people said it was the difference in belief. It should be a sin to think of such a serious thing while holding two naked beauties in his arms. Shinrei's hand that was originally on Athena's waist gradually slid down. The round and elastic buttocks made him unable to let go. Athena was sleeping soundly beside him. She moved her body but didn't wake up. Instead, Rala opened her eyes. Shinrei pulled Rala closer and kissed her delicate face. Rala's face was flushed, and her brows were slightly wrinkled. It seemed that his newly grown beard stubble was pricking her. She gently touched his mouth and chin. As the delicate magic power swept over, the beard stubble had disappeared. It was even cleaner than a XXX brand razor. This was the highest treatment that only Shinrei could have. Now you've become a young gigolo again. Chinray felt the comfort on his face. He deliberately sighed after getting the benefit. I wanted to pretend to be mature. Rala stared at him blankly. There was a trace of mischief in her eyes. Suddenly, a small strange rune jumped out of her fingertips. Chinray recognized that it was the aging mark of ancient runes. Then, the fairy Miss Long maliciously glanced at the man's lower body that was already in full bloom. Chinray suddenly shivered and quickly shook his head. It's still good to be young. The fairy Miss Long dispersed the magic and showed a proud smile. This expression made Chinray's heart aroused. He gently put down Athena's body, leaned over and pressed Rala's delicate body, and kissed her lips heavily. Rala gasped softly and responded to his kiss. Her legs clamped his mischievous hands. Don't move! Is there anything wrong with your body? Hee, of course, there is a problem. I'm burning with lust now. If my Rala baby is not willing to sacrifice herself to save me, she will die from the poison, Chinray said with a cheeky smile, fully demonstrating the male's bloodline talent of throwing moral integrity after taking off his pants. Rala's face blushed a little more. She bit his lips heavily and pushed him down. Bastard, I'm serious! Hurry up and check if your strength has regressed. We are all worried about you. On this side, Athena had been awakened by this movement. She leaned over. Chinray, are you okay? How can I be okay? I'm still energetic even after rolling in bed with you sisters for a few hours. Chinray held the two women in his arms. In fact, the biggest trauma in his battle with Obsidian was the sword on his chest, but the soul searing of the sword of fallen angel could not hurt the owner, so it was just an external injury. After Rala's treatment and the regeneration characteristic, it was no longer a big problem. You slept for 5 days. The power fluctuations in your body yesterday were very strange. When Kia was taking care of you, she suddenly and you. Athena's face was very red. Later, she couldn't hold on anymore and shouted for my help. As a result, Rala and I both, then you stopped. Ah? Chinray was a little surprised. Is it really the legendary aphrodisiac? I remember in the dream, it seems that the little maid seduced me first. Actually, Kia saw that your bad thing was still not obedient when you were asleep, so she was a little curious. Athena gently knocked the bad thing, who was still not obedient, and the thing was even more dishonest. But I don't know what's wrong with you. You are actually so fierce when your consciousness is blurred. Kia is just curious? Chinray showed suspicion. He knew the little maid's temperament very well. I'm afraid it's not as simple as curiosity. She most likely wants to secretly enjoy it alone, but she went for wool and came home shorn. As a result, she shamefully had to ask the allies for help. Chinray was also surprised by his power. Could it be that the stronger the understanding of the super system, the stronger the ability to have sex? Can I make the little demon girl kneel in my dreams? That's not the point. Rala saw this guy's wretched face, and she knew that he didn't think well. She grabbed him impatiently. The real reason why Kia called us here is that when you bullied her, a lot of power flowed into her body. She was worried that something would happen to you. Later, Athena and I, it was the same. We were all very worried about you. You should feel it immediately now. Is your power lost? Chinray only knew what was going on, but his power did not weaken at all. With a slight thought, he realized that the energy that was originally devoured to the maximum in star devouring had been reduced by a small part. Now that his compatibility with the super system was quite high, he immediately understood the reason. The energy devoured by star devouring would be automatically absorbed and transformed by star conversion to strengthen itself. However, his current power level had reached a bottleneck. It was in a saturated state, so he could no longer absorb the power of star conversion. Therefore, it overflowed through the dual training and was injected to his lover. Star devouring had a lot of powerful power from demigod. Chinray asked worriedly, "Do you feel any discomfort?" "No, instead, we got great benefits." Kia is likely to reach the level of Great Demon King after a while. Athena can at least break through a small realm. As for me, although my power level can improve for the time being, the benefits I get are greater. Rala shook her head. Because of this, we are worried if you have suffered any serious injuries that caused the loss of power. I'm fine, really. Shinrei looked at the concerned expressions of the two women, and his heart warmed. The power you get is the extra power overflowing from the Grand Master's inheritance. It has no effect on me. Don't worry. Don't worry, you almost self-destructed with obsidian this time. Rala curled her lips unhappily. There is only one use left for the amulet I gave you. Speaking of it, it's all thanks to your eagle amulet. Shinrei was also a little scared. He tried his best to kill obsidian with the power of the sword of fallen angel, but obsidian actually had the ability to self-destruct at the last moment. If it weren't for the amulet given to him by Rala, he would probably have been annihilated. Even if he was lucky enough not to die, he would definitely be a patient in the intensive care unit who needed to be reborn now. How could there be such a wonderful sex life? The amulet made by Rala was carefully made with the only self-protection scale on the fairy dragon's body as a prop. It could activate protection at the most dangerous time of life. It could withstand up to 2 attacks of the peak stage of the demon overlord. After Rala lost this colorful scale, it would take 100 years to regenerate it. It's the eagle amulet! Rala defended with dissatisfaction, but to be honest, Shinrei's description of the eagle was already beautified. The shape of that thing was a turkey, but it was full of the deep love of the fairy dragon. Shinrei understood this in his heart. Shinrei said this deliberately. He smiled and stroked the smooth jade-like bare back of the fairy Miss Long. I can only repay you with my body, baby Rala. I will use love to transmit that kind of inheritance power to you as a reward. Humph! The fairy Miss Long was very disdainful on the surface, but her blushing face betrayed the true thoughts in her heart. Her touching shyness made a certain man restless. In fact, it was extremely difficult for Rala to advance a small step in her current realm, but the energy, transmitted by Shinrei, contained a kind of pure power that could only be understood and fully absorbed by her level, which benefited her a lot. It could even make it easier for her to touch a certain legendary realm. Since this guy said that there are no side effects, I will reluctantly suffer a loss. Anyway, if I don't agree, this guy will also benefit Athena and the others. I can't let them just enjoy it. What's the matter with the capital and the sword of fallen angel? Athena saw Shinrei looking at Rala's beauty with glowing eyes. Even though she and Rala were already the best sisters, she couldn't help but feel a little jealous. She immediately diverted his attention and asked. Shinrei was actually very clear about Athena's careful thoughts. Although he was generous, in the Crystal Palace, no matter how close the sisters were, if they didn't handle it well, it was not impossible for them to be crazy even if there was a bad situation of fighting each other. Therefore, he immediately hugged his most beloved Legion leader tighter in a balanced manner and replied, I went to the White Feather Estate at that time, subdued Sikali, joined your father General George's forces, controlled the capital, and brought the sword of fallen angel back. Speaking of which, I'm having a headache on how to explain the sword of fallen angel to Princess Royal. Explain? Athena bit her lip gently. Do you still need Princess Royal to explain? I heard from Mala that she hugged you tightly in front of everyone. That scene simply shocked all the people on the Dark Moon's side. This is the Princess Royal Highness of our estate who doesn't care about any man. Soon, she will be changed to Her Majesty Empress. Such a sour tone doesn't sound like my Athena. It seems that you have been led astray by the little demon girl, Kia. Shinrei slapped her buttocks, then he pointed to the air. A long sword suddenly appeared and floated above. Athena was stunned. This is the sword of fallen angel. How is it possible? The artifact of the Lucifer royal family is already surnamed Chen, just like the demon shield and the god-eating mask. Shinrei looked a little embarrassed. Athena was dumbfounded. So Royal Highness Jia didn't get the artifact's recognition at all, but I didn't mean it. This is actually a misunderstanding. Chinray scratched his head. Forget about Rala. Isn't it just the 7 artifacts? My man can make an artifact. Now it is just a pseudo-artifact. In the future, it is not surprising to make a real artifact. Who cares? However, in the eyes of Athena, this matter was a big deal. Even if he had sex with Princess Royal Highness, the future Her Majesty Empress, it was far from having sex with the artifact. The sword of fallen angel was the symbol of the empire. It was to be passed down from generation to generation. The problem was that the artifact was bound to Chinray's hands. There was no way to return it to its original owner. If people knew that Jia's inheritance was actually a scam, the consequences were simply unimaginable. Athena couldn't care too much. She sat up suddenly. What should I do? We'll cross the bridge when we come to it. Don't think so much first. Let's get down to business. Chinray was dazzled by Athena's slightly trembling breasts after she sat up. He climbed up with one hand while giving a dignified reason. I'll work hard during this period of time. Try to raise your strength to Demon Emperor. Athena was pressed down by him as he attacked her breasts, and she struggled quickly. Rala at the side was a little jealous, but she heard Chinray shouted. Rala, come and help me hold her down. Ms. Fairy Dragon inexplicably had a strange excitement of participating. She immediately helped the tyrant to suppress Athena. She didn't use magic, but simple strength. The two naked beauties were entangled with each other. Their breasts were surging. The beauty was so amazing that it made some guy's beast blood boil. At this time, the voice of the little maid who had been eavesdropping outside the door for a long time came. Do you need help? Chapter 551. The absurd and intense night passed. Early the next morning, Chinray appeared in front of the Dark Moon's palace. After Chinray left the Dark Moon, Dodo, who returned from the Red Spirit Estate battle, began to work as a guest host with ease. Under the command of Delia, he completed some simple tasks of the financial officer. The main reason was that everyone's attention was focused on the decisive battle between the Dark Moon Army and the Capital Army in the past few days. In addition, a large number of merchants had evacuated, so there were not many affairs and no flaws were exposed. The Dark Moon's victory made everyone inexplicably excited. Everyone understood that after the former Regent Obsidian was beheaded by the Sword of Fallen Angel, Princess Royal Jia was already the master of the entire Fallen Angel Empire. It was only a matter of time before she left the Dark Moon and went to the capital to ascend the throne as the Empress. As the foundation of Empress Jia's rise, the Dark Moon would definitely get a lot of care and preferential treatment. The successor of the estate also attracted attention. The Dark Moon was now the most prosperous estate of the empire. If he could become the lord, the benefits were naturally needless to say. Some promising successors were staring at this position. They walked in front of Jia from time to time, hoping to get the trust of the future Her Majesty Empress. The Dark Moon's families and nobles were also paying attention to this step by step. No one wanted to lose the power and status in their hands. The people were concerned about their own livelihood. Jia's prestige in the Dark Moon was extremely high. The Dark Moon also went through difficulties under her rule, ushering in today's prosperity and strength. People hoped that the new lord could continue the prosperity of the Dark Moon. But for now, Jia did not go to the capital to ascend the throne. The lord of the Dark Moon was still her, so these concerns and actions were carried out in secret. As Jia's most trusted human financial officer, a famous internal minister of the demon realm, and probably the future financial minister of the empire, Dodo, who was a substitute, received many invitations and offers of goodwill during Chinray's coma. When a man became immortal, even his followers followed him. Obviously, he had become a popular person. The guards of the Dark Moon Palace had changed a lot. In addition to the original Red Blood Army, there were also some Imperial Guards brought by Obsidian from the capital. This was more of an attitude expressed by Jia to the capital army that had surrendered. Chinray didn't see Jia immediately like before. Instead, he waited in the council hall for about an hour before he saw the future ruler of the empire. Jia looked a little tired, but her eyes were faintly colorful. Behind her was the magician Stiller of the peak stage of the demon overlord. Chenrui could see that Jia's injury had now healed. Her demon overlord realm was very stable, and the territory power that she faintly exuded was also quite solid. It stood to reason that it would take at least a few months to reach this level. Jia didn't have the training ground function given by the super system. It was a miracle that she could stabilize her newly promoted realm so quickly. In fact, these days, several demon overlords such as Stiller in the capital had been helping her to treat and realize her realm at the cost of their own power. The treatment of Her Majesty Empress was naturally far from what Princess Royal Highness could compare with. The capital's demon overlords firstly wanted to improve the Empress' strength, and secondly, they wanted to express their loyalty on behalf of the elder families and royal families behind her. Your Highness. In front of Stiller, Chenrui still had to put on an act. Chenrui, come and meet this Madame Stiller. Dawn, the top magician of the capital's elder families. Jia hadn't been enthroned yet after all, so she used a respectful title for Stiller. Madame Stiller. Chenrui bowed to Stiller. Stiller was also a little curious about this human who was famous for his internal affairs in the demon realm. She nodded in return. Jia said, Madame Stiller, you've worked hard these days. Go and rest first. Okay, Your Highness, Demon Overlord realm is almost completely stabilized. It will be much smoother to break through to the intermediate stage in the future. Please don't forget to take the time to realize. Stiller knew that Chenrui was the core member of the original Dark Moon team. Jia must have something important to discuss. She bowed slightly and turned to leave. After Stiller left, Chenrui was about to explain about the Sword of Fallen Angel, but Jia gave him a back view and walked out. Follow me. The two walked all the way into the depths of the palace, but it was not to the bedroom in someone's wretched wish, but to the secret prison. This time, it was not an affair in the secret prison, but for several important captives inside. There were a total of 3 captives in the secret prison: Serene, Gerant, and Rometty. Serene was the Lucifer royal family, the peak stage of the demon overlord, and the only direct disciple of the Lord of Midnight Sunday. He once sneak attacked the Dark Moon's dark demon last time and almost destroyed the entire intelligence department. He also wanted to kidnap the human financial officer, Chenrui. Later, he was captured by the poison dragon, Paglio. Gerant was the 3rd general of the Empire, the intermediate stage of the Demon Emperor. He was an excellent commander promoted by Obsidian with outstanding ability. It was just that Obsidian had a good eye for people, but he had no tolerance. Gerant was once suspected, and he later proposed a plan to attack the western part of the Dark Moon. Unfortunately, the biggest spy, Josh, leaked the news. He was ambushed by Athena, Loki, and the Taurans, and he was captured. Rometty was the Legion commander of the Flying Cloud Legion, the peak stage of the Demon Emperor. She had excellent archery skills and was good at aerial combat. When she followed Pallor to raid Town Daiko, she chased after the defeated Dark Moon army with the First Legion. As a result, she was ambushed and captured by Crobolus. Although Jia had the unquestionable right to inherit the empire, even if she ascended to the throne as the Empress, she would definitely encounter various obstacles and difficulties, especially the issues of loyalty and right to speak. She must build her own team as soon as possible. These 3 people were all very outstanding talents. Whether it was strength, ability, or influence in the empire and army, they were quite outstanding. If they sincerely surrendered, they would definitely become Jia's arms to rule the entire Fallen Angel Empire. Uncle Sarandi. Jia came to Sarandi's cage. I think we can fulfill that bet in advance. Sarandi had been secretly taking care of the Dark Moon and protecting Grimm and his daughter. He only attacked the Dark Moon for the sake of the overall situation of the entire empire. At the beginning, he made a bet with Jia. If Jia defeated Obsidian within 10 years, Sarandi would surrender unconditionally. If not, Jia would prioritize the capital's interests and surrender to the capital. Royal Highness Jia! Sarandi stood up. These days he had learned about Obsidian's crusade against the Dark Moon from Rometty and Geraint. Of course, he only knew the Battle of the Moon Pass Fortress, the Battle of Town Daiko, and several battles where Geraint's surprise attack on the Wallen fortress failed. He didn't know the decisive battle in the Leith Field. At this moment, a vast and piercingly cold aura appeared in the secret prison. Sarandi, Geraint, and Rometty were all moved. Looking at the sword floating in front of Jia, they blurted out in unison, "The Sword of Fallen Angel!" All three of them knew that Obsidian had not been recognized by this highest artifact for 300 years, so he had to go to the secret vault to try every once in a while. Now this sword that rejected Obsidian appeared next to Jia, and it seems that it has actually recognized the granddaughter of the Lord of Midnight's son. Geraint was the first to react and asked, "Princess Royal Highness, I want to know if Royal Highness Obsidian was defeated?" Jia nodded and said, "He has died under the sanction of the artifact, and the entire capital army surrendered." Geraint was shocked. He thought of many things, and a storm surged in his heart. If Obsidian died under the artifact, then the artifact must have reached Jia's hands first, then the capital is also. Sarandi's eyes were filled with strong emotions. He finally understood the meaning of Jia's words when she came in. His face was surprised and excited. He slowly knelt down on one knee. "I, Sarandi, Lucifer, swear before the artifact that I am willing to become the long sword in the hands of Her Majesty Empress to kill all enemies on the road ahead, regardless of honor or disgrace, regardless of life or death." Sarandi did not use the title of Royal Highness, but Your Majesty. He had obviously expressed his attitude and determination. Chinray hurriedly stepped forward to open the secret prison, but Sarandi still did not get up and remained kneeling. "Sarandi, Lucifer, your bravery and loyalty will be the most important pillar of the Empire's prosperity." Jia gently put the Sword of Fallen Angel on Sarandi's shoulder, then Sarandi stood up. "It was a formal oath just now," so Jia added, "Uncle Sarandi, please take care of me in the future." Chinray smiled and saluted Sarandi. Sarandi nodded in return and bowed to Jia. Although the title changed back to Royal Highness, everyone had a tacit understanding in their hearts. Since then, besides General George, Jia had another heavyweight under her command. He was not a simple supporter but a die-hard loyal. Sarandi said to Geraint and Rometty, "Princess Jia has defeated Obsidian and become the true master of the Empire. Both of you are sensible people. We have discussed enough things in the past few days, so there is no need to waste your breath." Rometty took the lead to pledge loyalty. Geraint thought for a moment and said, "I have 2 questions that I want to get answers to." "Please say." Jia nodded and gestured to Chinray to release Rometty. "The first question is, what means did Royal Highness use to control the capital before the decisive battle? The second question is, why did Josh become Royal Highness' spy?" Jia glanced at Chinray, and Chinray immediately said, "General Geraint's quick mind is admirable. The capital was indeed taken down before the decisive battle. It was the Deputy Legion leader of the Red Blood Legion, who is also Royal Highness' fiancé, General Aguile, who went to the White Feather Estate and persuaded Lord Sikali to join forces with General George. After getting the support of the elder families and the staying royal family, they controlled the capital. Aguile? I didn't expect the Dark Moon to have such a character." Geraint naturally understood who Sikali was. How could he be easily persuaded? But he didn't ask too much. He just sighed. "It's a pity that I didn't meet him on the battlefield." Chinray smiled slightly and continued to answer. "As for the Red Spirit Lord Josh, after the fiasco of the last War of Lords, he has secretly surrendered to Princess Royal Highness. This time, it can be regarded as each serving his own master. General doesn't have to worry about it." In fact, Chinray still had many details that he did not say. Josh did make a great contribution this time. In addition to passing on the intelligence in time to make the Dark Moon take the initiative everywhere, he also influenced Obsidian in key decisions. He also used Obsidian's suspicion to eliminate several important figures of the Coalition army. Otherwise, the pressure that the Dark Moon had to face in the decisive battle would be greater. Not only that, Josh also used his identity as a quartermaster to put a potion in the food before the decisive battle. This potion was not poisonous, but it would only be triggered under intense exercise. It increased the physical load and accelerated the production of fatigue. This was also the real reason why the Capital Coalition Army was the first to weaken in the fierce battle. Due to the strict inspection and supervision of poison in the army, only Josh's identity and this potion could make the Coalition Army fall for it without leaving a trace. Geraint smiled bitterly. It turns out that after the War of Lords, both the Blue Lava Estate and the Red Spirit Estate are controlled by Princess Royal Highness. One is in the open while the other is in the dark. She deceived everyone. I'm convinced of my defeat. General, don't worry. Princess Jia and Prince Obsidian are different types of leaders. Even a powerless human like me can be put in an important position and become a financial officer. General can fully display your talents under Princess Royal. You only need to be loyal. Don't worry about anything else. Geraint thought of his past experience under Obsidian, and he nodded slowly. He understood that this was a way Qinrui gave him, but he did not agree. He asked again. Princess Jia, my saber-toothed tiger legion still has 2,300 captives in the hands of General Athena, and the Flying Cloud Legion should also have nearly 3,000 flying cavalry captives. I want to ask your majesty to release these headquarters troops to us, and then rush back to Tequila Fortress with General Rometty. I wonder if your highness can agree? Geraint's request was a bit too much. He asked for the most loyal 5,000 headquarters troops as soon as he opened his mouth, and he even asked Rometty, the surrendered general, to go to his old base, Tequila Fortress. Even Sarandi frowned a little after hearing it. Jia did not refuse immediately, but she asked, Are you worried about the Shadow Empire? Geraint showed a hint of appreciation and replied simply, It's better to take precautions. The closest ally is likely to be the fiercest enemy. Jia immediately made a decision. You and Rometty can freely recruit suitable soldiers or generals from the original Capital's Crusade army. The number is unlimited. The sooner you set off, the better. Geraint's eyes moved slightly. Freely recruit? Your Highness doesn't assign the assisting general alone? The so-called assisting was actually a monitor like the army's supervisor. At this time, Qinrui smiled and shook his head. General Geraint, I think you underestimate Princess Jia's courage and magnanimity. Geraint glanced at Jia, whose eyes were unwavering, and nodded slightly. Sir Qinrui, you are right. Princess Jia and Royal Highness Obsidian are indeed different. Then, Princess Jia, I suggest you immediately settle the affairs of the Dark Moon, rush to the capital as soon as possible, and let General George return to the Warlock Fortress to guard as soon as possible. The same is true for the Wallen Fortress on the west of the Dark Moon. Moreover, the Wallen Fortress must be refortified. I understand. I have been dispatching like this in the past few days. As for the defense, you will write a detailed proposal for me later. Jia paused and said, In the Battle of the Capital, General Doran and the Red Devil Legion were completely annihilated. General Geraint, I hope you can shoulder the honor and responsibility of the second general. Geraint took a deep breath and made a standard military salute. Geraint. Blair is willing to die for Her Majesty Jia. Sarandi took a deep look at Geraint and said to Jia, Your Highness, you seem to trust people too easily. Haven't you been betrayed before? This sentence was not avoided from Geraint and Rometty. Jia lowered her eyes slightly. Yes. But there are more people who sincerely serve. Qinrui added in time. Jia didn't look at Qinrui, but her raised eyes showed warmth and firmness. Just like the Lord of Midnight Sunday. Geraint added. This sentence made the eyes of Sarandi and others light up. Chapter 552. After properly arranging for the three of them, Qinrui followed Jia all the way to the bathing pool in the deep palace and entered the underground secret room that only belonged to the two of them. To Qinrui's surprise, the things in the secret room had been cleaned up. There were no wind chimes, mirrors, etc. It was only a matter of time before Jia went to the capital. In order to prevent the secret here from being discovered, it must be cleaned up, but it seemed a little early. Jia turned around and looked at him quietly. Don't you have something to tell me? First of all, I must explain to you about the sword of fallen angel. Chenrui smiled bitterly. This is an accident. I'm really sorry. When Chenrui was in the capital, he only used some unique runes to stimulate the reaction of the ancient runes, causing the illusion of the sword of fallen angel throbbing. But in fact, the ancient rune seal of the sword of fallen angel still strongly rejected Chenrui. If it was Jia, she would be rejected like obsidian. This sword was the most important prop to disintegrate the morale of the capital coalition army, so Chenrui had been using deep analysis to crack the ancient runes. While riding the little black horse day and night to the battlefield in the wilderness, he was training in the training ground of the super system while using deep analysis to crack the ancient runes seal on the sword of fallen angel. However, things went wrong. The seal of the ancient runes was more powerful than imagined. Deep analysis automatically moved to the sword of fallen angel itself. The seal of the ancient runes had not been unlocked yet, but the sword of fallen angel was surnamed Qin first. This mistake made Chenrui want to cry but have no tears. Fortunately, after becoming the owner of the sword of fallen angel, he used his own soul-splitting characteristic to finally break the seal from the inside to the outside. The sword of fallen angel had 3 characteristics. Sword maneuvering double the damage, and the user can control the sword body far away from the body within the effective range to launch various attacks. Soul splitting after stabbing the enemy, it will directly kill and split the enemy's soul power, and devour the flesh and blood to convert it into the user's power. Blazing Wings grants complete immunity to light and dark elemental attacks for a period of time, limited to 1 use per hour. Compared with the God-Eating Mask, the sword of fallen angel's attack characteristics were stronger. The flying sword was somewhat similar to the Xianxia method in Chenrui's cognition. It also had the effect of doubling the damage. Soul Splitter could not only kill the soul, but it also had the blood-sucking function. As for Blazing Wings, it would play an unexpected role in some targeted battles. According to Tet Ennis, the sword of fallen angel or God-Eating Mask alone was only a pseudo-artifact, that is, a quasi-artifact. Chenrui already had 2.5 pieces, but when he equipped them at the same time, there was no set bonus like when he played games before. It seemed that, as the old man said, only when 7 pieces were together could it become a real artifact. Chenrui had no special desire to collect artifacts. The unexpected acquisition of the sword of fallen angel gave him a headache instead. The analyzed 7 artifacts couldn't be separated from him. Moreover, the sword of fallen angel was different from the God-Eating Mask, or the elusive demon shield. It was related to Jia's rule of the entire fallen angel empire. This is the case. Chenrui forced himself to explain for a while. After I fully obtain the Grand Master's inheritance, I will definitely be able to solve this matter. Deep analysis was the function of the super system. As long as one day he could completely master the super system, then he should be able to unlock the binding of these things. The enlightenment along the way was quite rewarding. In the process of merging his mind with the super system, Chenrui's Fecta experience value continued to rise. It had now reached 100%. As long as there was an opportunity, he could break through to the next level, manifestation. Not sure if there was a precedent of the God-Eating Mask. Jia's reaction was very calm. She was not surprised, nor did she blame, but she asked faintly, "Do you want power?" Chenrui was slightly shocked. Seeing the ice-like calmness in Jia's purple eyes, he suddenly felt very uncomfortable for some reason. Jia only said this sentence, but Chenrui was very clear about the meaning. The economic scale of the Dark Moon was actually founded by Chenrui. The cloak gang controlled by him had completely controlled the Order of the Dark Moon. The Wyvern Legion, Taurens, and Medusas actually obeyed Chenrui's orders, not including the powerful earth elementals and several dragons. Now Chenrui had become the owner of the Sword of Fallen Angel. In addition to the Blue Lava Estate, the lords of the White Feather Estate and the Red Spirit Estate were all his servants. If he had the desire for power, it was not difficult to subvert the fallen angel empire again. Or he could use that magical transformation to justifiably pull Jia off the throne and use the identity of a Lucifer royal family to control the empire. Anyway, with the artifact's approval, it was the most unquestionable identity card. As a person in power, the most taboo was those whose achievements overshadowed the master. Especially since Chenrui almost controlled the three major estates now, he had grasped the lifeline of the empire. From the perspective of Jia the Great, he was the biggest threat. The example of hiding the rabbit and cooking the dog after it was done was not uncommon in the history of this world or the original Earth. Now that the dark moon had developed and obsidian was destroyed, it was time for Chenrui to hide and cook. Is that so? A faint chill appeared in Chenrui's eyes as he walked toward Jia. Jia looked at him motionlessly. Chenrui stretched out his hands, made claws, and reached toward Jia's throat. Jia didn't move. Chenrui raised his hand, grabbed both sides of Jia's face, and squeezed hard. The cold beauty's face suddenly changed, looking funny. Then, he rubbed and squeezed, making the beautiful face constantly deformed. Jia couldn't bear it anymore. She bit the back of his hand, leaving 2 crescent marks. Chenrui began to fight back. He bit, kissed her neck and sucked hard, wanting to leave his own bruised lip mark on the white jade. Without using the Demon Overlord and Demon Emperor territory skills, it was a very strange battle. In the end, both of them fell to the ground panting. Of course, the man's shoulder had the obligation to be a pillow for the lady. Stupid woman, you have so many demon overlords in your hands now. Won't you set up an ambush in the palace and kill me in one fell swoop? I will think about it next time. Jia bit her lip and said forcefully. Don't be silly. The same move is useless against the Traverser. The Grand Master's inheritor. Chenrui gently stroked her hair. I won't make the same mistake as last time. Last time. I command you in the name of Jia. Lucifer. You must survive. In a person's life, some people and some words can never be forgotten. Actually, this was hinted by Old Gauss and the others. Old Gauss doesn't know your other identities and secrets. It's mainly against Aguile, but as an emperor, I have to ask this. Jia's eyes were a little red. Her cat-like body curled up in his arms, trembling slightly. Chenrui wanted to say something, but Jia's low voice sounded. Listen to me first, okay? From the moment my father decided to let me take over as the Lord, the only goal in my life has become to revitalize the Dark Moon and recapture the fallen angel empire from Obsidian. I abandoned my original self, abandoned everything, and became a cold-hearted sister and lord. That day in the wilderness, when this goal was achieved, I didn't feel happy or satisfied in my heart. I only felt lost and afraid. Jia's body trembled more and more violently. The scene of you disappearing with Obsidian on the battlefield appears in my mind from time to time like a nightmare. I'm afraid of this feeling. I'm also afraid that one day I will change and no longer be afraid. The latter part of her words was very puzzling, but Chenrui understood Jia's meaning. He never thought that his position in her heart would be above those deep-rooted responsibilities and destinies. Chenrui closed his eyes and held her carefully like a precious work of art. At this moment, it was not a lord, princess, or empress in his arms, but a beloved woman, a weak woman who took off the cold mask and needed protection. When the wet marks on the brow gradually stopped spreading, Chenrui gently put the hand that stroked her hair on her back and said gently, Some things will always be persistent no matter how we change. You and I have this kind of persistence in our hearts. In fact, what you are facing now is not the end, but a new beginning. The road ahead may be full of thorns and difficulties, but you don't have to be afraid because I will always be by your side, just like I have always been before. This is the only power I want. In the name of Jia. Lucifer, before my flame of life is extinguished, you will be the only man with this power. Jia raised her head gently with a firm gaze. Our future has just begun, Your Majesty Empress. Chenrui smiled slightly and kissed her forehead. The two leaned against each other with their fingers interlocked. There was no barrier between their hearts. In the secret room, the man and woman who loved each other talked to each other, discussed the future in a low voice, and looked charming. Jia didn't ask anything related to the artifact because she trusted him. Your Majesty Empress, in the future, you have almost conquered the entire empire now, and I am a very lazy and cunning person. As long as I conquer our Majesty Empress, it is equivalent to conquering the empire. Jia had untied the knot in her heart, and she seemed to be much more relaxed. A faint smile appeared on her face. I think you need to correct a problem of principle. Whether you are the prince's husband or the princess's fiancé, you are always just a vassal, which is equivalent to my concubine. Don't get this kind of relationship wrong. Concubine? Chenrui was speechless about this title, so he simply played a rogue. Relationship? Can I understand this relationship as some kind of position? Jia's expression froze. She knew that she couldn't beat this guy in playing a rogue. She couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. This expression was very amorous, especially when it appeared on the face of the Princess Royal Highness, who was usually serious. Chenrui's heart rippled for a while. Put away your crooked thoughts, at least before a certain ceremony is held. Jia stood up slowly, looking radiant. Speaking of the ceremony in the future, I believe the entire empire will pay attention to it, especially your beautiful female companions. What do you think? My only fiancé? Only was a sensitive word in the harem. It seemed that the struggle in the Crystal Palace was everywhere. The male pig must be prepared for blood sacrifice at any time. Facing the confident future empress, Chenrui secretly wiped his sweat and didn't dare to answer. Chapter 553. Okay, dear Sir Financial Officer, I'm going to continue training. The training during this period is very important to me. When my realm is completely stabilized, it is time to go to the capital. You have to be ready to leave at any time. Jia gently brushed her golden hair. If you are free, please visit Isabella for me. Thanks to her on the battlefield this time, otherwise I will never be able to support until your arrival. Chenrui had previously heard Jia talk about Isabella's performance on the battlefield, and he nodded. When Jia was about to leave the secret room, she suddenly added a sentence that made Chenrui sweat, that end of the world. Play it 20 or 30 times for me when you are free next time. After that, the Princess Royal Highness ignored a certain guy with ulterior motives and left. When Chenrui left the inner courtyard of the palace, he was still a little perturbed. I played End of the World to Isabella alone, but Jia actually knew about it. It seems that the foundation of the harem has not been firmly established yet, and the tiles above have begun to leak again. By the way, there seems to be an attractive benefit from Madame Ant that I haven't received yet? I seem to remember that the original sentence is, I can do whatever I want at that time. No matter which man with a normal orientation hears this sentence, he will inevitably feel hot in his heart. Anyway, Ms. Intelligence Chief is already the woman. As he was thinking, he had already left the palace. When he walked into an alley, Chenrui suddenly felt something abnormal. A vigilant expression flashed past, then his brows stretched out again. Oliphius? I know you have a good nose. Miss Black Long's sneaky figure appeared in front of him, and he added, It's even better than the hellhound transformed by Dodo. Chenrui was very depressed. Which nose of yours can tell that I smell? Oliphius once went berserk on the battlefield, causing Obsidian to suffer a lot of losses. She was also a key contributor. At the beginning, Isabella's injury was relatively serious. Fortunately, the black dragons were not like the crystal dragons whose potions were ineffective. Plus, Isabella happened to have the high-purity healing potion that Chenrui had previously given her. Under the care of Isabella, Miss Long, who had a strong vitality, recovered from her injury very quickly. Obviously, she had now returned to a lively state. It was just that for some reason, Oliphius had not returned to the sheriff's house since she was recuperating in Isabella's house. She seemed to be staying there. It was the first time Chenrui saw her after he woke up. What's the matter? Why are you acting so mysterious? It's very, very important. Wait a minute. Olivius looked left and right anxiously like a competent bodyguard until she was sure that the nearby was safe. Then she ran over and carefully took out a small book from the space ring. Boss, this is the total number of enemies I killed this time. Athena said that the price of the air troops is doubled. The air demonic beasts plus cavalry multiplied by 2 is 4 times. Black Miss Long said happily. Her 2 eyeballs had become the shape of black crystal coins. Shinrei suddenly realized. It turns out to be a report. No wonder she is so energetic. He glanced curiously at the 3 small diamonds on Black Miss Long's forehead. He opened the account book and looked at it. After a few glances, he was speechless. Moonlight Fortress, killing 300,000 enemies and 100,000 air troops. Based on 10 black crystal coins each, it is equivalent to 5 million black crystal coins. Forget about the unit of measurement. The question is, how did the number of 400,000 only come out? Olivius, the Capital Coalition Army has only 2 air legions that came to the Dark Moon this time, the Dragon Rider Legion and the Flying Cloud Legion. The total is less than 10,000 cavalry, and our army has only destroyed about 100,000 enemies in the Moonlight Fortress. Where did you get the number of 400,000? Black Miss Long opened her mouth for a long time, and she replied, that maybe probably. I miscalculated. Just give me a discount based on your conscience. Even conscience is used? Shinrei was embarrassed, and he pointed to another one. Helping Crobolus intercept and witnessing her kill demon overlord Anspet is worth 100,000 black crystal coins. You even want to charge money for witnessing? Do you want to kill the enemy with your eyes? I must ask Betty about this. If you lie, I will definitely deduct the money. Wait. Don't ask Betty. I don't have a good memory. Black Miss Long scratched her head. You just have to take a look first. Shinrei rolled his eyes and pointed to the next one. Killing 300 flying cavalry of the Flying Cloud Legion in the Battle of Town Daiko is equivalent to 60,000 black crystal coins. 300 multiplied by 10 and then doubled equals to. Are you sure it is 60,000? I haven't been good at math since I was a child. Black Miss Long was already tearful. My mother passed away before I could teach more. What did you do? You made Olivius cry. Isabella's voice came from the front, and her veiled figure appeared in sight. Shinrei had long discovered that she was here, but he just didn't say it before. As soon as Olivius saw Isabella, it was as if she saw a long-lost relative. She threw herself into her arms and cried. Sister, he bullied me. Sister? When did this miser girl become so close to Isabella? Madame Aunt doesn't look like a rich person no matter how I look at her. Shinrei looked enviously at the miser who buried her head in the plump chest, and he deliberately snorted coldly. It's useless to call me sister. Isabella, do you know that Olivius actually wants to report false accounts to blackmail me, the employer? Other people can get away with reporting false accounts on the surface, but this chick is too fake. Experience is one thing, but the most important thing is the dragon's greed. The total amount is actually more than 100 million. Really? Olivius? Isabella touched Black Miss Long's hair. Black Miss Long cried with tears and snot. I'm just not good at math. Olivius, have you forgotten the provisions of our contract? I want to represent the audit office. I have the right to deduct all benefits. Also, as a bodyguard, you were almost killed by the enemy on the battlefield. Later, it was me, the employer, who saved your life. How should this be calculated? Speaking of which, how much more money do you have to pay me? Black Miss Long was speechless. Thinking that the shiny black crystal coins would be gone, she couldn't help but cry. Isabella glanced at Shinrei reproachfully. Don't tease Olivius. She is really brave on the battlefield this time. Shinrei enjoyed that charming gaze very much. He sighed on the surface. Well, Olivius, let's say you killed 10,000. 12,000 enemies. I will give you another 50% of the reward for each one. 15 black crystal coins for each one, which is equivalent to a total of 160,000 black crystal coins. Black Miss Long's wailing voice immediately stopped, and she said with a serious face, "No. 12,000 times 15 equals 180,000. This kind of fast and accurate calculation ability made Chinrui quite speechless. He asked, "Aren't you bad at math since you were a child?" I calculated wrongly just now. It should be 200,000, right?" The black crystal coins in Ms. Miser's eyes lit up again, and she asked tentatively, "You are really not good at math?" Greedy dragons, Chinrui had completely lost his temper. He took out a crystal stone. This is a super cold crystal with 100% purity. The market price is at least 200,000 black crystal coins. Do you want this or 180,000 black crystal coins in cash? Ms. Miser, who didn't give up, asked, "Can I have both?" After getting an affirmative answer, Oliphius decisively chose the cold crystal stone. She looked excited with tears streaming down her face. A super cold crystal worth 200,000 black crystal coins. I'm rich now. Cold crystal was a kind of magic material that was extremely difficult to purify. The price of low purity was ordinary, but the price of high purity, especially this kind of 100% purity, was indeed very valuable. However, for Chinrui, who had the skill of refining, the cost was less than 2,000 black crystal coins. Chinrui didn't look at Black Miss Long anymore, and he winked at Isabella. Isabella, are you free tonight? Can we discuss that, life? Sister is not free. Oliphius held Isabella's hand intimately like a pair of real sisters. She answered first very impolitely. Isabella smiled behind the veil, and she did not say yes or no. Rather than saying that she acquiesced to Oliphius' endorsement, it was better to say that she saw through Oliphius's careful thoughts. Chinrui rolled his eyes. "Oliphius, I may consider giving you a raise next month? I already have 200,000 cold crystals, which is enough to match the 4,000 years of your unequal contract." Oliphius's horizons were broadened now. How could she not understand that she was scammed by this unscrupulous employer at the beginning? She said proudly, "I don't care about your little money. I have noble moral integrity. I just regard money as—" Before she finished speaking, Chinrui suddenly pointed to the front in surprise. Who dropped that white crystal coin?" Whoosh! With a sound, Black Miss Long's figure had already appeared at the location pointed out. Her eyes were bright as she scanned the ground. "Where? Where?" Chinrui and Isabella looked at each other, and their faces showed an expression of "I knew it!" at the same time. This money grubber girl who doesn't even let go of white crystal coins is still noble? Isabella showed a smile in her eyes. "Stop fooling around. I'm going to the palace to find Princess Royal now. There is something important. Chinrui, you go with me." Usually, Chinrui would have agreed without hesitation. The problem was the end of the world, that Jia said before she left made him feel guilty in his heart. The adultery has obviously been exposed, and the two female protagonists are about to meet. If the male protagonist is still present recklessly, he deserves to die stupidly. In fact, Chinrui didn't know that end of the world was actually deliberately revealed to Princess Royal Highness by Madame Ant. Although there was some encouragement in it, and it was effective, only Madame Ant herself knew how much of it was to show off and show off. Chinrui immediately changed the topic. "What is the matter that requires me to find Princess Royal? I just came out of the palace. She seems to be stabilizing her realm. Two very urgent news." Speaking of this, Isabella became serious. "This is not a place to talk. Let's go to the palace. Oliphius, your injury has not fully recovered. Go back first." Black Miss Long nodded obediently. Chinrui saw Isabella being so serious, so he didn't have any other thoughts and followed her to the palace. Chapter 554. Jia was a little surprised to see Chen Rui who returned, but Isabella's report immediately focused her attention. Isabella reported two things. The first was about the Bloody Empire. Some time ago, the Bloody Empire Emperor Raisin had an epiphany, so he was training behind closed doors. He handed over the state affairs to Great Prince Aelius, and Second Prince Edmund assisted. Obsidian's crusade against the Dark Moon also deliberately chose this time, but unfortunately, he was defeated and died in the end. The two ruling princes of the Bloody Empire were already fighting openly and secretly for the position of the first heir. Now the contradiction was even worse, and it gradually evolved to an uncontrollable level. A few days ago, Edmund, who was suppressed by Aelius, finally adopted the most extreme means. He launched a mutiny when Aelius went out for inspection, but he fell into Aelius's ambush instead. He was forced to lead the remaining soldiers to escape from the capital. He was currently fighting against Aelius in the north of the Iron Fist estate. Aelius publicly declared Edmund as a traitor as the regent prince, while Edmund claimed that Aelius persecuted his brother, deceived his father Raisin, and conspired to subvert the entire Bloody Empire. Now the two forces were in a stalemate. Shinrei's spirit was refreshed. The Bloody Empire has been eyeing covetously. I was originally worried that the Bloody Empire would take advantage of the civil war of the fallen Angel Empire to launch an attack, but I didn't expect them to have internal strife. It seems that Raisin's retreat this time is just in time. Without this threat, Princess Royal can quickly rush to the capital and immediately ascend the throne as the Empress to stabilize the entire empire. No, Princess Royal Highness can't go to the capital yet. Isabella shook her head. Because of the second news, the envoy sent by the Shadow Empire to the Dark Moon is already on the way. When we received the news of the official visit, the envoy had already passed Town Wallen. Moreover, according to the latest intel, the Shadow Empire's forces are actively mobilizing. Shinrei was taken aback. The Shadow Empire's forces are mobilizing? From the current intel, it is going to the east and south. The predicted target may be Town Leia in the west of the Dark Moon and the Tekula fortress formerly guarded by General Gerent. The Jurgo fortress adjacent to the Moon's Shadow Empire and the Bloody Empire doesn't seem to be moving. It is obviously targeting the fallen Angel Empire. Jia looked solemn. It seems that Gerent is right. The closest ally is probably the most ferocious enemy. Our biggest enemy now is not the Bloody Empire, but the Shadow Empire. Isabella, Jia said with a solemn expression. Gerent is right. Our biggest enemy. Our biggest enemy now is not the Empire but the Shadow Empire. Immediately order him and Rometi's Flying Cloud Legion to set off first. Use the demonic beasts in the air to rush to Tekula Fortress as soon as possible to set up defense. Tim's Moon Shadow Legion has returned to Wallen Fortress, but the troops are not enough. Jia pondered. In this war, the three legions of the Dark Moon lost nearly half of their forces, and the original Capital Coalition army suffered more than half of their casualties. It can be said to be a great blow to their vitality. Although the current recruitment of recruits is smooth, it is impossible to form an army in a short time. It is really nerve-wracking. What about the Undead Legion? Isabella narrowed her blue eyes. The casualties this time should be a good supplement for the Undead Legion. Jia shook her head. If we haven't eliminated Obsidian, we can indeed do this. But now that Obsidian has been executed and the Capital Coalition army has all surrendered, if their dead comrades are transformed into undead creatures, then I will gain far more than I lose. Moreover, in the battle with Obsidian, the Dark Moon's trump card has been completely exposed. There are no secrets in terms of military power. With Catherine's wisdom, if she really wants to launch a war, there will definitely be targeted deployments. Isabella shrugged like Shinrei's habitual action, but Jia could faintly guess that Isabella should be able to guess the problem of the undead. The purpose of raising this opinion was more to remind her. Shinrei finally said, Don't worry about the undead materials for the time being. Garadim once said that there are at least 300,000 soldiers in the ancient battlefield of Town Yenko that can be used. If he helps guard the Wallen Fortress, it should be able to block the possible attack. The Dark Shadow Empire's envoy will probably return in 1 or 2 days. Now we can only adapt to the situation. Let's first see what news this envoy brings. At the same time, Princess Royal Highness should make all the preparations to go to the capital. Jia nodded. In fact, in the past few days she had already finished settling the Dark Moon and was ready to leave. However, because Qinrui had not woken up, and the most important sword of Fallen Angel was missing, she had been waiting with the reason of consolidating her realm. The three discussed related matters for a while. Jia summoned old Gauss, Sarandi, Gerant and others to discuss, while Qinrui and Isabella left the palace to do things separately. When walking to the outer courtyard, Qinrui said, "If you confirm the details of the Shadow Empire's envoy, let someone tell me immediately." Isabella nodded. Her voice suddenly became charming as she asked, "Why don't you ask me if I'm free tonight? Is it because of a certain Royal Highness's important matter that you are not in the mood?" Qinrui's eyes lit up. "Mood is actually nothing, so, beautiful and charming lady, do you still remember a certain promise? Can you leave the door open for me tonight? I have always had a good memory. It's okay to leave the door open." Isabella's blue eyes flickered. "It's just that you have to deal with the little black dragon's sister guarding the door first." Olifius was now stuck in Isabella's house every day, which meant that if Qinrui wanted to fulfill certain benefits, he must first get rid of the eyesore, Black Miss Long. "Why is Olifius so attached to you suddenly? She even calls you sister?" Isabella spread her hands helplessly. "It's better to call sister than mother. The first thing the little black dragon chick did when she woke up from her coma was to call me mother. It almost made the always calm Ms. Intelligence leader lose her composure. These days, she took care of Olifius's injuries, but she didn't deliberately express it. She didn't know why, but this chick liked her and kept sticking to her." Isabella sighed. "It's good to have Olifius here, lest I'm always alone at my place. I can only look forward to the 1 or 2 hours of kindness that someone occasionally allocates every day. I'm sorry." Qinrui lowered his head guiltily. "I'm very selfish. Why don't you just move to? Don't think that I'm as gullible as your women." Isabella snorted softly, but her eyes looking at this man showed a touch of gentleness. "Since you feel guilty, then a certain promise is cancelled. We don't owe each other anything. If you are free, you are welcome to come to my deserted little place. I think Olifius will be very happy to see her big financial boss. It's over, now even the benefits are gone. Princess Royal Highness is like this, and so is Madame Ent. Princess Royal Highness at least delayed the payment, and Madame Ent simply closed the account. You don't recognize me after eating? Are all women so irresponsible?" Qinrui turned his head angrily and walked away. Seeing that there were no patrolling guards nearby, he suddenly appeared in front of Isabella in an instant. He teleported to a certain corner, then he lifted the veil and pressed on the slightly purplish-red lips. Double teleportation was used to do this kind of thing. It was really a pearl covered with dust. Isabella was caught off guard and wanted to struggle, but now Qinrui's basic power had reached the peak stage of the Demon Emperor, and his spirit power had reached S+. Isabella couldn't break free without increasing her strength. She bit the man's lips hard, but Qinrui still didn't let go. Slowly, the resistance became active. Their lips and tongues intertwined. After a long time, the two sides slowly separated. Isabella looked at his swollen lips, and she gently stroked them with her fingers distressed. "It's not that I didn't keep my promise, it's just I haven't completely overcome the difficulties, right?" The so-called overcoming difficulties was the condition of a previous welfare. "I don't care what difficulties you have, and I don't care how deep the knot in your heart is. I don't even care about being a substitute. You just need to know one thing." Qinrui hugged her domineeringly. "You owe me a few lives. You can't let yourself die again without my permission. Do you understand?" Isabella trembled. "What do you mean?" Qinrui didn't speak. He just looked straight into her eyes. Isabella looked away, gently broke free from his embrace, and put on the veil. "Don't be smart." Isabella's eyes were a little red. She turned her back and walked out slowly. I have to go back to the stronghold first to deal with the envoy's intelligence. Inni. Chunrei sighed. I'll only say this. You have died once, and you can even start over again. What else can't you start over again? Isabella's body paused, and her voice was a little low. Give me some time. Chapter 555. Chunrei watched Isabella leave his sight with a complicated mood. In fact, from the time he really began to feel Isabella with his heart, he felt something abnormal. This beautiful woman was far better than men in terms of wisdom and means. She could even easily manipulate people's hearts. She was a veritable devil's snare flower. She smiled on the surface as if she didn't care about anything and could let go of anything, but in fact, her heart had been tightly closed. What she really let go was herself. Chunrei didn't know if the past of the Breeze shadow boots had left some indelible mark, but he could feel the heavy shackles in Isabella's heart. If Kia evaporated the tears behind her back with a burning smile, then Isabella had turned into a pool of ashes that was about to burn out. Whether she would be reborn from the fire or completely annihilated in the next moment, it was up to her. There was no doubt that Isabella liked him. At first, he might just be a substitute for some illusory character in her mind. Step by step, she was really moved now. Perhaps this kind of feeling could become the key to healing the soul and unlock the heavy shackles step by step. If life was just the first time, Chunrei had seen a tear that couldn't be evaporated by flames. That scene was unforgettable. He would not let the tragedy happen to his woman again. Anyway, in his heart, he had already decided to be a certain guy's uncle. After leaving the palace, Chunrei put on a cloak and walked all the way out of the city gate. He found Garatum in the specially divided undead area in the southern suburbs. In this decisive battle, Garatum could be said to have become famous. The entire demon realm knew that the undead magician who disappeared for 2 years had returned, and he also brought an unprecedented powerful undead unit. Even though the undead had exposed many of their shortcomings in battle, they had shown more of their strength, which was enough to contend against any regular elite army, including the Air Force and cavalry. Facing this master who signed a master-slave agreement with him, Garatum's mentality was completely different from that year. At first, the two were hostile. Chunrei was not his opponent, but he used the Fountain of Resurrection to make Garatum flee with a heavy injury. Then, Garatum was subdued by Paglio in town Yenko. He was forced to sign a master-slave contract with Chunrei under coercion and temptation. To some extent, Garatum was the same as Rala. He was a fanatical research talent. In order to obtain a long life to study undead magic, the undead magician took the risk to transform himself into an immortal corpse necromancer. This was also the reason why he submitted to Chunrei at that time. The master-slave contract was not like the master-servant contract. Although it was also impossible to betray, if the master died, it would not cause the death of the subordinate. Moreover, the master could not use the contract to terminate the subordinate's life in advance. What Garatum didn't expect was that because of this submission, he received inspiration that was almost equivalent to a qualitative change. Undead magician, undead cavalry, poison explosion. In addition, there was also a huge amount of funding, including a huge amount of equipment for the regular army, the magic items of the skeleton magician, and even the complete dragon corpse. His great success today was definitely inseparable from this master. The strength shown by Chunrei also intimidated Garatum. In the Silent Night wetland, he was only at the Demon King level. Later, he leaped at an unimaginable speed. Great Demon King, Demon Emperor. When he reached the decisive battle in the Leith Wilderness, he was already able to compete with the peak stage of the Demon Overlord, Obsidian. Don't worry, Master. Even if you are not here, I will completely obey the Master's command, Garatum said respectfully after learning about Chunrei's intention. Let alone Athena, who had the best impression of Garatum, just the beautiful lady with glasses was enough to make Garatum lower his head with his tail between his legs. He witnessed the scene of Ms. Rala trampling 2 dragons of the peak stage of the Demon Overlord in front of everyone. There were also several Demon Overlords present, but none of them dared to breathe heavily. Shinrei nodded with satisfaction. Try to complete the transformation of the undead in the ancient battlefield of Town Yenko. Don't worry about the equipment. It is more than enough this time. Master, there is one more thing. I have reached the peak stage of the Demon Emperor 2,000 years ago, but I have been stagnant after transforming into a corpse necromancer. The body of the undead doesn't need other creatures. For example, in my current state, it is almost impossible to advance directly. Even if Master has the black potion, it has no effect on me. Even the longevity potion and resurrection potion are equivalent to violent poisons. According to ancient records coupled with my research findings, to jump to the next realm, it requires a rather complicated ritual and considerable risks. These are still fine, but the key is that it requires a lot of precious materials. Garatum was not very secure. The materials needed for the ritual were extremely rare and varied. Previously, he had spent a lot of money to equip the undead. In total, the value of the materials needed this time was still above the huge sum of money to equip the undead. It was difficult to gather them with his own strength, so he proposed it nervously. What Shinrei needed was his power to create the undead. There was no shortage of demon overlords around him. There were 3 dragons alone, and the most terrifying Madam, Corpse Necromancer, didn't know that Rala was also a dragon's. It was said that this master was the only close friend recognized by the Earth Elemental King. Tell me, how can I help you? Shinrei agreed without hesitation. Garatum was one of his own. The stronger he was, the better it was for him. He was never stingy with his own people. Hearing such a straightforward answer, Garatum suddenly had a strange feeling of a gentleman would die for his confidant. The 2 red lights in his eye sockets lit up. The corpse necromancer's body is a tool that can be abandoned at any time. The key is the soul fire. If you can get all the materials, there may be a qualitative change under a special ritual. This kind of ritual is quite strict and requires a lot of precious materials. There was a part of it in Sir Paglio's treasure back then, and I collected another part after I came out. Paglio's treasure all fell into Shinrei's hands back then. The poor corpse necromancer barely took away his phylactery after being drenched in deadly, sulfuric acid. Shinrei understood what he meant. After asking about the required materials, he took them out from the storage warehouse one by one. Some had been used up or were not in the poison dragon's treasure, but Shinrei later obtained many good things, including the crystal dragon's treasure and various materials offered by the Custer family. Garatum got more complete materials than he expected, so he couldn't help but be overjoyed. Although the remaining materials are in short supply, it shouldn't be a big problem. I will entrust the top business family of the Shadow Empire, the Custer family, to collect them. But what are the dragon power essence and the siren's heart? Many of the materials proposed by Garatum were very obscure, but Shinrei had absorbed a lot of relevant knowledge in the mechanic alliance of the Shadow Empire and the Bloody Empire. He knew their origins and uses, but he had never heard of these 2. I'm not sure either. The dragon power essence should be related to the dragon, and the siren is a kind of siren creature in the Dead Sea. I wonder if the siren's heart is their heart? Siren from the Dead Sea? Shinrei thought that the Earth Elemental King would soon go to the Dead Sea, and his heart was moved. However, it was better to understand the specific situation of these 2 materials. If he was wrong, then Garatum's ritual would not be advancement but suicide. Leave the materials to me. You can deal with the matters at hand with peace of mind. My suggestion is just for reference. The white bone magic and the transformation of the spirit dragon should be based on your undead magic basic theory. Garatum nodded and personally sent Shinrei out of the southern suburbs. Back in the Dark Moon City, Shinrei did not return to the house, but he went to the southeast block. The dragon power essence and the siren's heart were very important to Garatum, so he must figure it out. He happened to have a teacher who had received thousands of years of inheritance, so he should be able to get a satisfactory answer. Besides, there were some important things left by the ancient alchemy civilization that he wanted to give to Tetanus. The Cloak Gang's backyard was very lively and filled with the aroma of food. Tetanus, Sky and his wife, Eve, Alien, the old goblin and his daughter, Ms. Sasa, were all there. They were barbecuing in a circle. Master Xingxing was not present due to some affairs of the Mechanic Association. The arrival of Aguile immediately attracted everyone's attention, especially the two girls, Alien and Eve. Their smart eyes flashed with joy. The quickest to react was the old goblin, Didi. He immediately stepped forward and bowed deeply. Master. Chenrui nodded and gestured to the old goblin to continue sitting down. There was no need to be overly courteous. Teacher. Chenrui saluted Tetanus, then he greeted Sky and others. In this battle of the Dark Moon, the improved magic crystal cannons provided by Tetanus played a big role. As long as there was enough time to build more and better magic crystal cannons, then the military power of the entire Fallen Angel Empire would be greatly enhanced. Sky said, "The Battle of the Dark Moon can be said to have shocked the demon realm. The insufferably arrogant Regent Obsidian was actually beheaded by you and Princess Royal. It is incredible that the weak defeated the strong in this battle. You and Royal Highness Jia will be recorded in the history of the demon realm and praised by future generations. Soon you will be called Royal Highness, Royal Highness." Chenrui shook his head. Master Sky has overpraised. This is all the credit of Princess Royal Highness and all the soldiers. As for the title, no matter what I look like, I am just Master's friend, Aguile. Sky showed a gratified smile and nodded. Since we are friends, you don't have to be polite if you need my help. Although Xingxing is not here, I know that he also has this attitude. Chenrui's eyes lit up. An estate of the Dark Moon cannot be compared with the entire empire. For Jia, the capital is the core of her power, but at the same time, it is also an unfamiliar environment. She must get the support of all parties. For example, the Mechanic Association. The Fallen Angel Empire's Mechanic Association's influence was far inferior to the other two empires due to the lack of top senior masters like Nate and Anderson who had the title of Number 1. If Sky, the former top leather armor master, was willing to join the association in the name of Fonsac, plus the influence of Master Xingxing, he could definitely compete with the other two empires. For Jia, it was a considerable help. Sky glanced at his wife and daughter who showed support. You should go to the capital. Now that Nate of the Bloody Empire has lost his reputation, I don't have to worry about revenge. It's just the right time to come out and covet some fame and fortune. Chenrui knew Sky's personality very well. Not only was he not greedy for fame and fortune, but he was very indifferent. Especially after encountering the great changes back then, he valued his family more. He just wanted to live a stable life. Now that he took the initiative to come out, it was obviously to repay his kindness. Since Master is interested in fame and fortune, I have to be a villain who wants to repay your kindness. Chenrui did not refuse hypocritically, but he continued the conversation. The two looked at each other and smiled without any unnecessary pretense. This was originally the case between true friends. Chapter 556. Well, if you two keep looking at each other like this, I'm afraid there will be a problem. My Sally will be jealous. The one who spoke was the old man Tetanus, Sky's wife and Aldous' sister, Sally. She was forthright. Somehow, the old man took a fancy to her, and he recognized her as his daughter. Eve and Alien are still here. What is your old grandfather saying? Sally poured another glass of wine for the old man and complained. Why should Mother be jealous? What will happen to Sir Aguile and Father? Alien asked curiously. Eve shook her head as she couldn't understand. Instead, Ms. Sasa opened her mouth. I understand. This is the kind of gay friend who likes men mentioned in Alice's book? No wonder Alice said that Sir Aguile is annoying. Shut up! The old dwarf was startled and immediately gave his daughter a knock. Ms. Sasa covered her head and looked at her father with resentment. Chenrui's face behind the mask was a little green. It seemed that the poison of the little loli was everywhere. Sir Aguile is a good person. Alice also wanted us to come up with ideas to deal with Sir, but my sister and I didn't agree, Alien said, and Eve nodded quickly. The little lowly's resentment against Aguile? Shenrui shook his head with a bitter smile and took Alien's good person card. At this time, Tetanus had finished the wine poured by Sally and said, "You came here to find me, the old man, right? Come with me." The old man drank a lot of wine today, and his nose was red. He dragged Shenrui to the lab. Walking into the lab, Shenrui moved a chair for the old man to sit down. The old man burped and said, "This time the old man really made a mistake. You can actually bring down the entire empire. This is an amazing miracle. You are right, things are impermanent, and everything is possible. However, I know you, kid. It is impossible to learn from me at this time. Don't hide anything. You know the old man doesn't like to beat around the bush. But I definitely can't go out like Sky. My bet with Saman is only 1 year away. I just want to seize this time and teach everything I know to you and Aldous, understand?" "Understood." Shenrui's heart was slightly touched. The old man's mind now is to pass on the torch of fire before he dies. He is really good to his disciple. When the Dark Moon started the war, he even wanted to forcibly take me away from the war. However, with me around, the fire can be passed on, but the torch of fire is still unknown. I came to see you today for 2 things. Have you heard of Dragon Power Essence and Siren's Heart? The Dragon Power Essence is the essence condensed by the souls of dragons that did not dissipate after their death. It has the dragon demeanor and part of the soul power of the dragons when they were alive. This kind of material is extremely rare in the demon realm, but there is a lot of it in one place. However, even the peak stage of the demon overlord will die if he barges into that place. That is the Dragon Island. Dragon Island? It was not the first time that Shenrui heard of this term. The Dragon Island was a gathering place of social dragons. It did not refer to a single island. In fact, Crobolus was from a branch of the Dragon Island. The Dragon Island was equivalent to a family model. In contrast, Peglio and Rala were equivalent to stragglers without a group background. Tetanus looked solemn. I don't know how many dragons there are on the Dragon Island. Although the fertility rate of dragons is extremely low, no one knows how many dragons there are on the Dragon Island. However, it is said that even the demigod powerhouse does not dare to barge into the Dragon Island. It is evident how powerful they are. Originally, from the literal understanding of dragon power essence, Shenrui still wanted to find Peglio and the others to think of a way, but he did not expect it to be the soul essence after death. As for the Dragon Island, perhaps there were still future troubles from the last battlefield. Shenrui did not have this kind of delusion at all. Siren is a siren clan of the Dead Sea. They are good at mixing spirit power into singing to create a powerful illusion. The so-called siren's heart does not refer to their heart, but the life crystal on their forehead. After losing it, their vitality will be greatly damaged, and it will take many years to recover. Siren's temperament is very unyielding. If you don't get their own will, you can't get the siren's heart even if you kill them. Shenrui frowned. In this way, the idea of asking the Earth Elemental King for help was also dispelled. Garadam's advancement was really not a simple matter. Thank you for your answer, teacher. The second thing is that when I went out this time, under the guidance of the Grand Master's inheritance, I got some relics of the ancient civilization. Please have a look, teacher. As Shenrui said, he took out the expired black potions from the ancient alchemy civilization ruins. When Tetanus heard the words, Grand Master's inheritance, and ancient civilization, he was already in high spirits. He carefully took the abandoned potions, unplugged the stopper, sniffed it with the tip of his nose, and he suddenly woke up from his drunkenness. Styx flower, purple thinking grass, deer tooth vine. I didn't expect that after this bottle of eternal power expired, I can actually calculate the components in it. It's just that Styx flower and purple mind grass have always been incompatible. When they are used together, they will have a very violent effect. They are usually used to trigger poison. How can they both appear in the black potions with a mild temperament, and no side effects? Different uses have different functions. If I add the black feather root, using the water solution and acid leaching method, The original explosive attribute can produce a kind of resonance power. I have taken a full set of eternal potions. In addition to the individual increase in attributes, after drinking the full set, there was a strange fluctuation similar to resonance in my body. My overall quality has increased again, just like taking the black potion again. Then we can infer that Styx flower, purple mind grass, and black feather root should be the basic materials of every eternal potion. The water solution and acid leaching method are necessary secret methods for the preparation. That's right. Tetanus showed ecstasy and jumped up from the chair. The black potions had been lost for so many years, and most of the prescriptions and secret methods were incomplete. Pharmaceutics was broad and profound. A small difference could change the attributes of the entire potion. Now that some of the prescriptions and secret methods could be confirmed, combined with the knowledge left behind, there would definitely be a stage breakthrough, especially for a super quasi-grand master like Tetanus. The old man suddenly reacted, and his bloodshot eyes widened. How did you know that adding the black feather root and using the water solution and acid leaching method would have such an effect? I've never taught you this method, and even in the 10,000 years of inheritance I've obtained, there's no such method. Where did you learn it? Shinrui also came to his senses and pointed to his head. I don't know how, but I know it. It should be due to the inheritance I got. Unfortunately, there is only a part of the Grand Master's consciousness, which is incomplete. Ancient alchemy civilization. Your Grand Master must be from the ancient alchemy civilization. The old man grabbed Shinrui's shoulder excitedly and shook for a while. If Shinrui hadn't reached the same level of strength as the old man now, perhaps his bones would have been shattered. The secret recipe that Shinrui knew was actually obtained from the memory fragments he devoured in the alchemy civilization trial, but he didn't expect the old man to know the ancient alchemy civilization. After a long time, the old man regained his calmness and found that his vigorous eagle claw technique was a bit excessive. He patted his disciple's shoulder embarrassedly and said some ancient records that could not be seen in the demon realm's history books. The 7 royal families in the demon realm's various races today were not the first to exist in the demon realm. Before that, there were countless civilizations or forces. These civilizations were only recorded in some ancient scrolls. It was said that the ancient alchemy civilization was the origin of alchemy. The scope covered was not limited to mechanics and potions. Alchemy covered every corner of life. For example, lighting. The current magic lamp of the demon realm was invented by the mechanic Grand Master Martini 70,000 years ago. Its true value was comparable to any artifact, or even more. However, in the alchemy civilization, the magic lamp had appeared a long time ago, but the original principle was different. It was made with a kind of light-gathering insect that had been extinct in the demon realm. The insects were constantly dying and reproducing in the special environment of the lamp. It was equivalent to a kind of near-eternal power. This alone was beyond the reach of the current magic lamp. It was just that the alchemy civilization was annihilated in the vast river of history like many civilizations for some reason. Only part of the knowledge of mechanics and potions was passed down, and it had evolved into the 2 major alchemy academic sects today. Shinrui asked tentatively, "Does teacher know the Abyss family?" Tetanus was startled, and he pondered. "I haven't heard of it, but the word abyss means taboo in the ancient language. I don't know what the specific meaning is. By the way, where did you get these abandoned black potions? Is there anything else?" When the old man mentioned this, his eyes were glowing with green light. Shinrui had goosebumps, but Shinrui knew that what the old man valued was knowledge rather than wealth. Tetanus was similar to an expert professor who devoted his life to academic research. He was a real scholar and researcher, not a beast, like Nate who pursued fame and profit and deceived the world. That is a place in the White Feather Estate. It should be a site of the ancient alchemy civilization. Only some lamp spirits are still alive in it. Lamp spirits? Tetanus said excitedly. I remember that there are ancient records that the lamp spirits are the concubines and magicians in the alchemy civilization. You actually found a living lamp spirit? Not only the lamp spirits, there are also some assembled puppets, crystal beasts, and so on. Unfortunately, they are no longer usable. Chenrui thought about it. It's just that no one can enter that place except me. I was in a hurry to rush back to the Dark Moon this time, so I didn't have time to take more things away. I only brought back these abandoned black potions. I have heard of assemble puppets. What is a crystal beast? The more unknown things were, the more it could arouse the old man's interest. His face was full of fanaticism as he said incoherently, "Why are you in a hurry to come back? Why didn't you bring more out?" Chenrui rolled his eyes. "If I don't rush back, the Dark Moon will be finished. I'm afraid you have run away with your adopted daughter's family now." However, he also knew the importance of the knowledge of alchemy's civilization to Tetanus. Not only was it a fanatical pursuit of knowledge, but it could also get a deeper understanding from the remnants of alchemy's civilization. Then, the deadly duel a year later might not be a sure defeat. Chenrui also wanted to use Tatini's ability to restore the combat power of those assembled puppets and crystal beasts. If he could really restore the powerful troops left by the alchemy civilization or even mass-produce them into an army, then even if the Shadow Empire or the Bloody Empire used the fallen angel army, he could be fearless. The giant crystal beast was an existence that could directly compete with the demon overlord. The assembled puppets, crystal beasts and lamp spirits also had very powerful combat power. "I've decided!" The old man slammed the chair. "If you want to go to the capital, take the old man with you. There is only one condition. Get the alchemy civilization out for me to study." This was a decision he could not have wished for. Chapter 557. Chenrui naturally would not refuse Tatini's request to enter the capital. With the reputation of the top leather armor master, Fonsac, and the top item master, Tetanus, the Fallen Angel Empire's Mechanic Association was definitely going to surpass the other two empires. The old man wanted to teach Chenrui the ancient inheritance memory knowledge, but the important discoveries of the materials just now inspired him a lot in the research of black potions. He was about to experiment, so he didn't force him to stay. Chenrui walked out of the lab and said goodbye to the Sky Couple and others. Before leaving, the eyes of the two dark elf girls made him feel a little strange, as if. Chenrui then shook his head. Eve and Alien are only 1 or 2 years older than Alice, and they are still little girls. They usually have too little contact with the opposite sex, so they are just some vague feelings that are not sensible. As long as I alienate them appropriately and let them see more of the world, they can disappear. Back at the house, Chenrui told them the latest intel of the Shadow Empire. Athena and Kia both looked worried. The civil war of the Fallen Angel Empire had just stopped, and the foreign enemies immediately looked covetously. Delia looked a little solemn. She was the first to get the intel of the Dark Shadow Empire's envoy, but it was still too late. After getting the so-called official news of the envoy had already crossed Town Wallen. The purpose was very clear, which was to catch the Dark Moon off guard. Lomont, Paglio, and Crobolus looked indifferent. Only Rala said, "The road of the powerhouse is always full of thorns. You can reach your current level, you must have experienced countless dangerous battles to break through your limits. As your woman, I have also experienced it before. I will not be an obstacle to you entering the peak." Paglio understood the first half of the sentence the most. He watched this human strength take off step by step. In 2 years, the strength of Lesser Demon leaped to the peak stage of the Demon Emperor, and he also had the transformation ability comparable to the intermediate stage of the Demon Overlord. This was an unimaginable miracle. The Grand Master's inheritance was certainly an important reason, but it was also inseparable from countless training and battles on the edge of life and death. The fairy dragon's voice then sounded. "However, you don't need to invest everything for a mere empire. Even if this empire is gone, so what? We can go to another place. At most, we can escape to the distant region outside the 3 empires and open up another space like the Rainbow Valley. If you want Jia or other women, just take them together." Chenrui didn't expect Rala, who had always pretended to be naive, to say these words. He understood that Rala still had lingering fears because he almost died with obsidian on the battlefield. Thank you very much for Catherine the Great's kindness, but the affairs of the fallen angel empire will be solved by the Lucifer royal family themselves. There is no need for the Shadow Empire to bother. I will remember this friendship in my heart as a witness of the two empires going forward hand in hand. Turtula spoke in a rather unfriendly tone. So, the Lord of the Dark Moon is going to refuse the friendship of our Empress. Jia was not the Empress now. A lord rejecting the friendship of a great Empress was enough to start a war. However, the war excuse was just a name. If there was really a war, there would be a war even if there was no excuse. Turtula was just using this as a pretext to exert pressure. Humph! Stiller let out a cold snort, faintly exuding the breath of the peak stage of the demon overlord. Are you threatening me? In front of so many powerful demon overlords, Turtula was still domineering. He clearly showed that he was not afraid of falling out. He represented the powerful Shadow Empire. Once these demon overlords dared to make a move, the entire fallen angel empire would be retaliated several times over. Chenrei suddenly thought of the saying, "A weak country has no diplomacy." Diplomatic status was based on the strength of the country, no matter which dimension it was. Only when one's motherland was truly powerful could one wash away the humiliation of history, deter the petty and evil, and establish an invincible position on the international stage. Extreme performance could easily become a tool to be used, causing one's true original intention to deviate from the track and go further and further away. Our country and the fallen angel empire have always been friendly and cooperative, and we have signed a peace contract. How can it be a threat? Lilai's expression remained unchanged. Her Majesty Catherine herself also walked out of difficulties step by step. She naturally understands Princess Jia's difficulties, so we came from afar with goodwill, hoping to help your highness. Dodo's transformed Chenrei asked a prepared line under Athena's hint. What kind of help can Her Majesty Catherine provide? Lilai's gaze stayed on Chenrei for a moment, and she replied, Her Majesty Catherine has begun to hoard heavy troops in front of Tekila Fortress and Town Leia. She can advance in both directions to assist Princess Jia to control the entire empire by force in the first place and successfully ascend the throne. Lilais knew that it was difficult to hide the movements of the army in the territory from the fallen angel's eyes and ears, so she simply said it with a dignified reason. Assist? This is a good word. The real Chenrei changed his voice and spoke behind the mask. There is an old saying in the demon realm that there is never reaping without sowing. So, in order to repay this assistance, what kind of reward should we pay? Should we pay a lot of money? Or should we cede some important land? Money and ceding land cannot be equated with true friendship. Lilais still had a moving smile. In everyone's ears, this sentence was not satisfied with ceding land and reparations. In fact, Her Majesty Catherine does not want money or land as a reward. She just hopes to work hand in hand with Princess Jia to deepen the cooperation between the two empires, including economic and military aspects. We will strengthen trade between the two empires, reduce tax rates, and promote development. Lilais said a lot. It sounded like a win-win situation, but in Chenrei's ears, these benefits contained a lot of embryonic economic warfare. I didn't expect Catherine to have such insight. As a partner, we hope to get the Dark Moon's soil improvement technology, magic crystal cannon, heavy ballista and other advanced ordnance manufacturing technology, including borrowing some exclusive talents, such as this financial officer, Sir Chenrei. Lilais obviously got to the point. She smiled and glanced at Chenrei. At present, the two princes of the Bloody Empire are confronting each other in the north of the Iron Fist estate. After Princess Royal Highness ascends the throne, Catherine the Great wants your empire to send troops from the Warlock Fortress to help the Bloody Empire quell the civil strife. Of course, the army of the Shadow Empire will enter your empire's territory through the Tekila Fortress to assist, and our empire's first general, Brock, will also send troops from the Jurgle Fortress to exert pressure. Chenrei suddenly understood Catherine's intentions. Firstly, it was to obtain confidential technology and talents. Secondly, it was to use the fallen angel empire to fight with the bloody empire to reap the benefits. She really didn't need to cede land, nor did she need to seize the city. As long as she exhausted the effective power of the fallen angel empire and the bloody empire, wouldn't the territory be at her fingertips? Taking advantage of the burning house, fishing in troubled waters, driving the tiger to devour the wolf, destroying the country through false means, sitting on top of the mountain to watch the tigers fight. There were countless strategies and calculations in it. Chenrui felt inferior. Judging from this trend, Catherine was determined to make a move when the fallen angel empire was weak. Jia and the capital's demon overlords were not fools. Putting aside the tricks of economic trade, everyone could see the sinister intentions of the so-called cooperation. Jia immediately refused. "Please forgive me, I can't agree." Lailai's was not surprised by Jia's refusal. She said with a smile, "Your Highness said it too early? No matter what, Your Highness is only the Lord of the Dark Moon now. You can't represent the will of the entire empire. If Your Highness doesn't agree, Her Majesty Empress can change to another partner who can truly represent the fallen angel empire, such as Sikali, Lucifer, who occupies the capital of your empire, or another more sincere royal family." The meaning of the Shadow Empire was very simple. Now the fallen angel empire has no master. If you don't agree, I can invade with my army and support a more obedient puppet to ascend the throne. This was a blatant threat. The faces of the demon overlords around Jia suddenly changed. A murderous aura shrouded Lailai's. Lailai seemed to have some kind of secret treasure by her side. She still maintained a calm smile. She had the momentum of remaining calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her. Jia had been recognized by the sword of Fallen Angel and defeated Obsidian. She was the recognized heir of the Empire. Even if the demon overlords had their own plans in their hearts, they couldn't deny this. Now that the Shadow Empire's envoy openly threatened the future Empress of the Fallen Angel Empire, it was threatening the entire Fallen Angel Empire. Moreover, it was in front of so many demon overlords, so they naturally couldn't sit back and watch. The strength of the Shadow Empire was stronger than that of the Fallen Angel Empire. Especially in this kind of internal friction battle, the Fallen Angel Empire had suffered heavy losses, and it was pulled further away by the other two empires. Once these two envoys were killed, it was tantamount to cutting off the last hope. The Shadow Empire's troops that were hoarded at the two borders did not hesitate to send out troops. As the saying went, a slight move would affect the whole situation. Although Stiller and other demon overlords were angry, they still didn't dare to act rashly. What Madame Lailai's wants to express is that we have to accept Catherine the Great's friendship whether we accept it or not. Chenrui pondered for a moment, and he broke the increasingly stiff atmosphere. This sentence was obviously a knowing question. Lailai smiled and said nothing. Turtilla sneered and said, "Sir Igual, after the hurried farewell at Mountain Shillong last time, I miss Sir very much." "Oh? I wonder if Sir Turtilla's golden puppet has been repaired." Chenrui deliberately provoked. His current royal star transformation power was no longer comparable to that day, so he was naturally not afraid of Turtilla. Only then did everyone know that this Igual had actually fought with Turtilla. It seemed that the latter had suffered a lot of losses. However, Turtilla was not fooled. Instead, he added, "Sir's strength is indeed extraordinary. With the God-eating mask in hand, I know I'm not your opponent. It's just that I didn't expect that the master of the Beelzebub royal family would actually submit to Princess Royal Highness of the Dark Moon." The word we just now was used so intimately that I couldn't see the old hatred between the two royal families at all. As soon as these words came out, the eyes of the capital's demon overlords all fell on Chenrui. The Beelzebub's God-eating empire was destroyed by the Fallen Angel Empire. The two families could be described as a long-standing hatred. There had been rumors that Igual was a remnant of Beelzebub, but everyone only thought it was a rumor. Now the Dark Shadow Empire's envoy, Turtilla, personally said that Igual was the king of Beelzebub and had mastered the God-eating mask. Judging from the conversation between the two, Turtula was defeated by the god-eating mask, and even caused the Asmodeus royal family's golden puppet to be severely injured. Princess Royal Jia's fiancé, the future husband of the empire, is actually the master of the Beelzebub royal family. How can this not be shocking? So, what is Exhilarating? Beelzebub's intention in helping Jia like this? What conspiracy is there? A few demon overlords with active thinking immediately thought of the reason for Obsidian's sanctions against Jia was losing the god-eating mask fragment. Could it be? For a while, many people began to whisper, and their eyes looking at Jia seemed complicated. Jia nodded and gestured for the three of them to go out first. The excited voices of several demon overlords immediately sounded in the hall. Princess Royal, who is Exhilarating? Turtula said that Exhilarating is the king of Beelzebub. It doesn't seem to be slander. Even if he is not the Beelzebub royal family, he may be related to the Shadow Empire. He pretended to stand up, but he actually agreed to the conditions of the Shadow Empire on behalf of Royal Highness. Jia sat quietly on the highest chair and did not answer. Soon, Exhilarating, who was condemned by everyone, appeared in the hall. The soundproof magic circle seemed to be activated in the hall again. It suddenly became quiet, and not a single sound could be heard. Time passed minute by minute. The light of the two moons gradually turned from white to purple. Under the quiet moonlight there were countless restless hearts. The quiet moonlight began to become slightly dazzling again. Although it was not hot enough, it brought light to the entire demon realm. Lilys and Turtula rushed to the palace early in the morning. Now that Jia had not ascended the throne, it was the time to press on step by step. Once Jia really returned to the capital and ascended the throne, then the whole situation would change dramatically. The army of the Shadow Empire had quickly mobilized toward the two major locations of the fallen Angel Empire. It was estimated that they would be assembled in 2 days. This was the real reason for giving the Dark Moon a deadline to think. The extra time was a buffer for themselves to respond to changes. Outside the palace, Lilys and Turtula met Athena, who came out to greet them. Beside Athena was a pair of strange man and woman, both of whom were demon overlords. The strength of the green-haired woman alone was comparable to Turtula. Although the other man did not release his breath, he gave Turtula an invisible terrifying pressure. The peak stage of the demon overlord. Turtula and Lilys quickly exchanged glances, and Athena said, "Envoys, please come with me." Athena's direction was actually not inside the palace. Lilys asked, "General Athena, where are we going?" "Doesn't Her Majesty Catherine want to hear the reply of the Lord of the Dark Moon?" Athena was calm. "Both of you will understand right away." Lilys and Turtula were a little surprised, but they were not worried. In just one night, what countermeasures can Jia have? Anyway, the Dark Moon didn't have the courage to set any traps, so they immediately followed Athena and walked outside. The Dark Moon city did not suffer from the war. Coupled with Jia's great victory, the bustling situation of the past had been restored a lot. There was an endless stream of people and businessmen coming and going. As Athena walked, she asked, "Both of you, how is the economy of the Dark Moon compared to the Shadow Empire?" Lilys nodded and said, "The prosperity of the Dark Moon estate is famous in the demon realm. Although it is not comparable to our empire's Dark Shadow's capital, there are only a handful of estates or cities that can be compared with it. To be able to develop to this extent in a short period of time, and even drive other places to follow suit, the talents of Royal Highness Jia and Sir Chenrui, the general's lover, are really amazing. I would like to say something inappropriate in private. If the general and Sir Chenrui can switch to our empire, I believe Her Majesty Empress will meet any conditions of both of you. Thank you for your attention, Royal Highness Catherine and Madame Lilys." Athena smiled slightly, and she did not continue the conversation. This was already a tactful refusal. This attitude was not unexpected to Lilys. If it was so easy to rope in, it would not be Chenrui or Athena. However, since she said this now, it might be a step forward in the future. The group walked all the way out of the city gate, rode on the prepared demonic horses, and came to the southern suburbs. The increasingly gloomy breath made Turtilla and Lily's eyes flash with vigilance. Athena said, "Don't be nervous, both of you. This is the barracks of our Dark Moon's undead army." Standing at the gate of the undead barracks was the Terror Knight of the intermediate stage of the demon overlord, Pegasus. After seeing Athena, he saluted respectfully and let everyone in. Pegasus and the Spirit Dragon were known as Garadam's greatest masterpieces. They had the real demon overlord strength and immortal attributes. His body was destroyed in the Battle of the Wilderness, but his soul fire was not extinguished. He was resurrected by Garadam using the soul summoning technique, but his state was still relatively weak. It would take a considerable period of time to absorb the dark elements to fully recover. There was an endless undead army in the undead barracks. They were all equipped with armor and weapons like a regular army. At present, they were all standing still like corpses as if they were dead. However, Turtilla and Lily's knew that as long as the controller gave an order, these undead would become a terrifying combat power. The Battle of the Dark Moon made the status of the undead soldiers in military operations change dramatically. No one dared to underestimate the undead that could only be used as cannon fodder. Both of you, how is this undead army plus the 3 legions of the Dark Moon compared to your empire's army assembled in Town Leia? Turtilla's pupils contracted slightly. He was not Jiangon, so of course he would not follow the plot of the great ensemble of the 3 kingdoms and say, "Worthy of its reputation," because Athena had already carried the meaning of provocation. At this critical moment, provocation meant, the surprise in Lily's eyes flashed, and she asked calmly, "General Athena, can your words represent the entire Dark Moon estate?" At this moment, they heard the sound of saluting cannons coming from the Dark Moon city in the distance. Some kind of cheers were getting louder and louder. Turtilla took a step forward and stood in front of Lily's to protect her. His sharp eyes fell on Athena's face. "What is this sound? What do you mean?" "This is the sound of the Dark Moon celebrating. They should have received a magic message. Her Majesty Jia has successfully ascended the throne in the capital." As for Madame Lily's previous question, Athena looked at Turtilla without avoiding. Athena. Wales, the Dark Moon's acting lord, greets 2 envoys. Even though Turtilla and Lily's were quite shrewd, their faces changed when they heard Athena's words. Then the 2 immediately calmed down. Their first reaction was that Athena was deliberately mystifying. This is too incredible. Jia ascended the throne in the capital? Yesterday afternoon, the 2 of them saw Jia and the sword of fallen angel in the palace with their own eyes. This is definitely not an impersonation. In just one night, Jia went to the capital and ascended the throne as the empress? She must be hiding. She wants to set up a diversion to avoid this decision, then put on a show to delay time and rush to the capital. Turtilla snorted coldly. "I didn't expect that. We have overestimated Princess Royal Highness. She actually used this kind of petty trick. Even if she hides, it is useless. If we don't get a reply, the Wallen Fortress, Red Spirit Estate, and Tequila Fortress will be captured by us at the same time the day after tomorrow. By then, it will be too late for Princess Jia to get the throne even if she really wants it. It's ridiculous that the 2 of you think you are smart, but how ignorant you are actually. First of all, I will correct your basic mistake. Now it is Her Majesty Jia, not Your Highness." Athena knew that the 2 of them didn't believe it, so she sneered. "Just last night, Her Majesty Jia arrived at the capital with several elder families and royal family demon overlords. Today's coronation ceremony will be held, and she has successfully ascended the throne." Looking at the doubtful expressions of the 2, Athena showed a proud expression. "I believe that General Gerent, who left early in the morning, is about to arrive at the Tequila Fortress. The Red Spirit Lord Josh returned to the Red Spirit Estate after the decisive battle. He also took the 3 legions of the original capital army with him. He is currently waiting in Town Sam on the border. Behind Town Sam is Town Moling, which Kaneda had operated for many years. It is extremely sturdy. Even an army several times larger can't break through in a short time. As for the Dark Moon, Just now, I led you to watch the prosperity of the Dark Moon and the military power of the Dark Moon. Isn't that enough to explain my attitude? I forgot to tell you that Master Garatum has led half of the undead army to the Wallen fortress. Is this only half of the undead army? Turtilla and Lilys both took a deep breath. If what Athena said is true, in the case of a well-prepared battle, even if the Dark Shadow army is deployed, it is impossible to take down the 3 key places of the fallen angel empire in a short time. Finally, Her Majesty Jia has a few original words for me to convey to the two of you. We can afford to fight, and we can also afford to drag on. As long as the Shadow Empire dares to fight, we dare to take it on. Even if it benefits Raisin, we will drag the Shadow Empire down with us. Chapter 559. Lilys and Turtilla were finally truly moved. Athena's determination and performance now are by no means faked. Could it be that Jia has miraculously returned to the capital in such a short time and ascended to the throne? In theory, there are 2 ways to ignore space. The first is the water element magic, time and space gate. This magic is effective for a short period of time, and it is very easy to be interfered with. During the effective days after it is cast, it will continuously consume spirit power every day. The second method is to build a space portal. This condition is more demanding and has extremely high environmental requirements. The most basic facility is to build a strong magic pool. For the capital of an empire, this kind of environment will definitely be strictly guarded and eliminated. Moreover, with the fallen angel capital's sanctions and precautions against the Dark Moon for 300 years, it is impossible for Obsidian to leave a door for the Dark Moon. The most important thing is that whether it is the time and space gate or the space portal, there are strict restrictions in terms of distance. It is impossible to reach such a long distance between the capital and the Dark Moon estate. Otherwise, by building a space portal, humans and the demon realm can directly kill each other. Is there a need to fight once every 500 years? Lilys and Turtilla's only hope now is that they have misjudged. Catherine's purpose is to take advantage of the critical moment when the fallen angel empire is without a master to enter and drive the fallen angel empire to fight the bloody empire, instead of the shadow empire fighting the fallen angel empire desperately. Once the fallen angel empire really goes all out to fight and does not hesitate to use the power of the entire empire to consume the national power and troops of the shadow empire, then just like Jia's words, it will ultimately benefit Raisin. The shadow empire is dragged to death by the fallen angel empire. This is definitely not the goal of this envoy. In fact, this Princess Royal Highness. Perhaps I should really change her name to Her Majesty Shay. She will definitely do what she said. Otherwise, she will not angrily refuse Obsidian's proposal and openly trigger a crusade. We have understood General Athena's meaning. Now we want to return to the Dark Moon City. I wonder if General allows it? Lilys' tone softened a little. Athena had 2 intermediate stage of the Demon Overlord and 1 peak stage of the Demon Overlord, plus so many undead army. It was easy to kill them. Lilys was not afraid of death, but she wanted to confirm the amazing news as soon as possible. Both of you are guests of the Dark Moon. As the new lord, please forgive me if I am rude or inconsiderate in my hospitality. Both of you can help yourselves. If you want to return to the Shadow Empire, I will, organize a cocktail party to send you off. The entrance was forcibly transferred to the palace by Rala with space magic, and the illusion circle of ancient runes was also activated in the Rainbow Valley. In the eyes of the accompanying demon overlords, the whole process was like traveling through space from the palace, which was equivalent to some kind of great teleportation technique. Only Stiller, who had profound magic attainments, felt a little strange. Thinking of the terrifying magic power that Rala had shown on the battlefield, her heart was filled with awe. After a period of teleportation, everyone appeared in the Rainbow Valley, within the capital. It was a huge and dangerous valley, but with everyone's speed, it only took a few hours to reach the capital. Jia's appearance gave General George and others a huge surprise. All the elder families and royal families were shocked. when the sword of fallen angel with a biting cold aura appeared, except for Aguile and Rala, who were next to Jia, the demon overlords like Sarandi and Stiller, the defenders led by Oliver and Old Cowan, General George Sikali, and all the soldiers knelt on one knee at the feet of Jia, who was recognized by the artifact. It was fine if it was just the artifact's recognition. Now that Obsidian was dead, the capital and the 4 estates were all in the hands of Jia. Among the 3 generals, 2 supported Jia, and 1 had been destroyed. These were all real power. Only with strong power as the foundation could the owner of the artifact truly gain the allegiance of these royal families and family tyrants. The coronation ceremony began to be prepared overnight. The families quickly released the news, and the soldiers went door to door to inform the residents. Under the spread of General George and Sikali, the news that Obsidian was killed by Jia in the Dark Moon Estate with the sword of fallen angel had long been spread throughout the capital. The people knew that the future empress was Jia, but they didn't expect her to return to the capital so soon. The capital was overcast these days, and it rained from time to time. It was the same today. The cold wind carried with it a cold drizzle. Just when the sky was just bright, the central square was already crowded with people who came, facing the heavily guarded and temporarily built high platform. Under the attention of everyone, Jia appeared on the high platform. It was the first time for many people to see the legendary Princess Royal, the granddaughter of the Lord of Midnight Sunday. It was said that she was only in her 20s, but she actually defeated the regent Obsidian, who had ruled the empire for 300 years and regained everything that belonged to her. Now it was time for the coronation. Due to the urgency of the situation, a series of complicated ceremonies could not be held like the regular coronation ceremony. Many steps were saved. Under everyone's gaze, under the light of the artifact, the sword of fallen angel, in midair, Jia finally wore the crown that symbolized the emperor. For a while, except for the new empress wearing the golden crown, everyone present knelt on the ground. Jia tried to calm the excitement in her heart. Her father's unforgettable wish before his death has finally been achieved. She originally thought that she would have to wait for a long time for this day, and even it was just a wish for her entire life. She didn't expect it to become a reality so soon. This crown was not only a symbol of power, but also a symbol of responsibility. As the man said to her, the future of her, him, and the entire empire had just begun. In the future, she would face more difficulties than in the Dark Moon, but she would not be afraid or flinch because he would always be by her side. After everyone got up, Jia's voice sounded with a hint of heaviness. The former regent Obsidian. Lucifer's violent and reckless behavior, crazy accumulation of wealth for his own selfishness, exclusion of dissidents, crusade against the estate, caused the internal strife of the empire. Because of this internal strife, we consumed too much power. The deceived soldiers waved their swords and slashed at their compatriots. The lives of countless warriors died in the hands of their own people and under Obsidian's selfishness. As the winner, the first thing to do was to punish the loser's mistakes. The so-called winner takes all, but many things were true. Obsidian had indeed been unpopular in the past few years, especially after falling for the fundraising trick. Many people present were infected by this painful atmosphere. The capital had the magic communication tower with the highest authority directly to each estate. Through this kind of communication tower, each estate received the relevant news early in the morning. Many people had gathered. Jia's oath was also spread to all corners of the empire in this way. Although there was a certain delay due to equipment problems, it could be regarded as a live broadcast. After denouncing Obsidian's crimes and elaborating her victory, Jia's voice became impassioned again. I, Jia, Lucifer, swear by the artifact, the sword of fallen angel today that I will use my whole life to eliminate civil strife and poverty. The miracle of the Dark Moon Estate will reappear in every corner of the empire and lead the entire empire to true prosperity and strength. Everyone, no matter where they are, will be proud of being a citizen of the fallen angel empire. The firm oath and the light of the artifact made the eyes of the soldiers and people full of passion. Someone shouted, "Long live Her Majesty Jia!" First, and the voices in the square began to rise one after another. The people's voices became more and more orderly and louder. The wave-like voice crashed into everyone's heart, as if it resonated with their hearts, giving birth to a feeling of unwavering faith. Even the cold drizzle became warm in this fervor. The same voice sounded in every estate in different places, but their eyes were the same passion. Seeing that the former Princess Jia finally became Her Majesty Jia, Chun-Rui felt a sense of accomplishment in his heart. He happened to meet Jia's gaze. In those seemingly cold eyes, there was a faint gentleness as in the past. Everything was in silence. Chapter 560. The enthronement ceremony was successfully completed. The next step was to take over the power of the empire. The lords who stayed in the Dark Moon had begun to lead the army back to the estate. General George and Sakali, who were entrenched in the capital, did not withdraw because Jia's foundation was in the Dark Moon. She only had Rala and Chun-Rui by her side. She must wait until the capital's situation stabilized before returning to the base. Fortunately, the Bloody Empire was in a period of civil strife. The Iron Fist estate in the north was the base of the Bloody Empire's second Prince Edmund. He was currently confronting the great Prince Alias in the north of the Iron Fist estate. It was impossible for him to be stupid enough to provoke the Warlock Fortress. Jia couldn't care less about resting. She immediately held a meeting, mainly to discuss the adjustment of positions and the division of the estate. After the death of the second general, Doran, there was still a shortage of one person. Many lords and generals who followed Obsidian on the expedition had died. The estate had no owner, the army lacked a commander, and many positions in the capital also needed to be adjusted. Jia meant to officially appoint Athena as the Lord of the Dark Moon and the third general of the Empire. The second general of the Empire would be taken over by the third general, Jarrett. Suman would be the Lord of the Blue Lava Estate. Sakali and Josh had made great contributions, so they would be conferred as dukes. The positions of the left and right prime ministers that had been cancelled by Obsidian should be restored, which would be held by the royal family and the elder family, respectively. The position of the finance minister and the military minister should be vacated by the elder family. The changes in some lords, legion generals and important positions would be discussed by the elder family and the royal family. This proposal was mainly to reward the meritorious officials. In fact, it was already very considerate of the elder family, but it still encountered unexpected resistance. Athena's reward was the first to bear the brunt. The wording of the Mons family's barocco was particularly fierce. It almost completely denied Jia's proposal. How can a girl in her early 20s be qualified to be the lord of the largest estate in the empire? Moreover, she wants to be conferred as the third general of the empire? Moreover, Athena's father, George, is already the first general. If this continues, the entire military will be the Wales family's world. Jarrett was the original third general. He was captured when he followed the usurper, Obsidian, to attack the Dark Moon. Why was he promoted instead? The Blue Lava Estate was also one of the 4 major estates. Suman was just the deputy legion leader of the Azure Legion. After the death of Lord Titan and the Azure Legion leader, he only grasped the military power of the Blue Lava Estate when he had no other choice. In terms of qualifications, he was not qualified for the position of a great lord at all. Faravid of the Maka family proposed that the Dark Moon's lord should be handed over to the elder families. Athena could be transferred to the capital to serve as the commander of the imperial army to protect Jia. Suman of the Blue Lava Estate would be made the lord of a medium-sized estate. The position of prime minister could be considered, but the positions of the finance minister and the military minister were quite important. Jia's eyes gradually became cold. In fact, this kind of complete denial was not entirely aimed at the proposal itself. It was more of an attitude that the capital was not the Dark Moon estate. Even the Empress, who was supported by the royal family, had to respect the elder families in many aspects. Obsidian had been like this for 300 years as the regent, let alone Jia, who had just ascended the throne and had an unstable foundation. Before Jia could speak, General George took the lead and stood up. "Baroque! My daughter blocked Obsidian's million army in the Moonlight Fortress and buried 100,000 of your people. Then she crippled hundreds of thousands of Palor's people in town Daiko. Geraint personally led a surprise attack on the Wallen Fortress, but he was captured by her. With such a record and credit, you are still not qualified to be a lord or general. What were you doing when my daughter showed her might? Were you beaten into a coward by the Dark Moon Army? George was now the early stage of the demon overlord. His personal strength was inferior to Baroque, but as the first general, he had held a large number of troops for many years. He was the undisputed top person in the military. He also made great contributions in occupying the capital this time. In this kind of meeting, George's right to speak was definitely higher than Baroque's. However, George already had the title of Duke and was the first general, so he was not on the list of rewards. Obviously, out of balance, it was counted to Athena. Baroque was a defeated general in the Battle of the Dark Moon, and Athena's credit was indisputable. Although he was angry, he couldn't find words to fight back for a while. Faravid said, "The third general is the symbol of the empire. Even if Athena is outstanding in strategy and military merits, she is still not qualified for this battle, let alone serving as the Lord of the Dark Moon." Lunters of the elder families also said, "If your majesty insists on rewarding Athena, then I agree with the third general's proposal, but the Dark Moon Lord must be another candidate." The Dark Moon Estate could be called the crown of the Demon Realm's estates in both military and economy. It was a piece of fat meat that everyone coveted. The elder families naturally wanted to gain control and further expand their influence on the empire. If it weren't for the cold mask trained in the Dark Moon, Jia would have long been unable to suppress her anger. The Dark Moon was built and developed by her and Qinrui. Before she fully controlled the entire empire, it was her most important foundation. These elder families actually wanted to take it for themselves. It was simply intolerable. The forces led by Sarandi, Vanim, George, and others expressed their support for the Empress's decision and argued with the opponents. There were also people such as Oliver, Old Cowan, Stiller, and others who stood in a neutral position without saying a word. Okay. At present, Athena is temporarily the Dark Moon Lord. This is a decision that has been made before I came to the capital. At that time, you all agreed. As for the rest, we will discuss it later. Jia interrupted the dispute between the two sides. The most important thing now is that the Shadow Empire has mobilized troops to the west and south of us. They also sent envoys to the Dark Moon to threaten us. Although I rushed to ascend the throne before this and disrupted Catherine's plan, the Shadow Empire army must be guarded. At present, in the capital coalition army, the Lord Army has begun to return to the station. The Dark Moon Estate has the Undead Army and the 3 legions in Athena's hands, so they can support Josh at any time. The south should be assured, but the Tekula Fortress in the west is a weak link. Geraint and Rometi of the Flying Cloud Legion are rushing to Tekula Fortress using flying demonic beasts, but they may not make it in time, so we must consider the support from the west. Salgar, how many air legions are stationed in the capital? Salgar, the legion commander of the Dragon Rider Legion, immediately stood up. Your Majesty, there are about 1,500 riders in all the air legions. How many troops can the elder families mobilize? This question was directed at Old Cowan. The number of troops that can be mobilized is estimated to be about 40,000, 10,000 of which are cavalry. Old Cowan, who had been silent, looked at the members of the elder families and gave a number. Jia nodded. Salgar, you set off immediately and lead the air legions to Tekula Fortress to rendezvous with Geraint and Rometi. Barocco, you gather 10,000 cavalry to reinforce. Sikali, transfer 30,000 infantry from your White Feather Army, plus 20,000 infantry from the elder families, a total of 50,000 people as the third batch of reinforcements led by Sarandi. Set off as soon as possible. Everyone in Tekula Fortress must listen to Geraint's orders. Faravit Stebble, you go south to support the Capital Legion from the Dark Moon going north. We must prepare for a comprehensive defense. Everyone present was slightly surprised. Jia's first resolution encountered strong resistance. It seemed to be a complete failure, but now it seemed more like a test. In this case, if there was another civil strife, then the fallen angel empire would collapse in the hands of Jia. However, there were also conflicts of interest between the elder families. They were not monolithic. A strong fortress always collapsed from the inside first. It all depended on Jia's means. The footsteps of the guards came. Jia and Chenrui noticed it almost at the same time. They immediately stood up, put on their masks, and kept a distance. After all, this was not the Dark Moon Palace. Obsidian's original confidant guards naturally had to be replaced. Now these guards were temporarily selected from the army by General George. Your Majesty, Sir Cowan of the Elder family, the Toro family, came with his son and daughter-in-law to apologize. Apologize? Jia frowned slightly, then she understood. Old Cowan's son, Ridutan, was the patriarch of the Toro family. His wife was Lorei, Obsidian's biological daughter. Chenrui's eyes lit up. He whispered a few words to Jia. The new Her Majesty Empress kept nodding. Her purple eyes glowed with brilliance. Chapter 561. The stronger the demon realm's powerhouse, the more difficult it was to have children. Although Obsidian had countless concubines, he only had one son and daughter for hundreds of years. Their talents were very mediocre. His son was called Tron. After Chenrui obtained the Sword of Fallen Angel from the secret vault, Tron was controlled by Oliver, who stayed in the palace. After learning that Obsidian died in battle, Tron was terrified and committed suicide to escape punishment. Obsidian's daughter, Lorei, married Ridutan, the son of the Toro family's patriarch, Cowan. Later, Ridutan took over as the patriarch, and the relationship between the Toro family and Obsidian became closer. Therefore, Obsidian could rest assured to let old Cowan, who was related by marriage, stay in the rear, but he also faintly monitored Oliver. Now that Jia controlled the empire, she naturally had to clean up the remaining traces of Obsidian. Tron and Lorei were the first to bear the brunt. Tron was dead, and he had no children left, but Lorei was still alive and gave birth to 2 children. It was related to the fate of the Toro family, so old Cowan took the initiative to come to apologize, hoping to get leniency. Jia did not meet Cowan immediately. Instead, she made some preparations and came to the hall with Chenrui before ordering old Cowan to meet her. Soon, old Cowan and a man and a woman walked in. The man had a square appearance, and the woman was extraordinarily beautiful. They also brought 2 children. A baby was held in the arms of the woman, and a girl about 3 years old was held by the man. Old Cowan bowed to Jia on the throne while the man and woman knelt down with their children. They knelt on both knees, bent down, and touched the floor with their heads. It was the most humble posture. The man was Ridutan, the current patriarch of the Toro family. Your Majesty, Ridutan. Toro brought his wife, Lorei. Lucifer, daughter, Ling Lucifer, and son, Shek. Toro to meet your Majesty and ask for punishment. The power of the Toro family was top-notch among the elder families. Old Cowan himself and Stiller were known as the 2 most powerful elders. Although the elder families showed an uncompromising attitude toward the Empress at the meeting today, it was related to Obsidian, the loser who had been characterized as usurping the country, which belonged to the most acute class contradiction. Unless the Toro family and old Cowan wanted to stand on the opposite side of the entire empire, which was rebellion, they couldn't protect Lorei. Even Lorei's children didn't dare to hide. Jia's gaze swept past the baby and fell on the little girl. Chenrui took a step forward and whispered, "The boy has a mutated great demon bloodline, and the girl is from the Lucifer family, no mutated bloodline." Although the voice was low, it couldn't hide from old Cowan and Ridutan. Their bodies trembled at the same time. Forget about the girl, this baby was less than 1 year old. Abwile just took a look and detected the degree of bloodline mutation. This eyesight alone was too terrifying. Old Cowan had fought with Chenrui before, so he knew that his true combat power was definitely not the peak stage of the Demon Emperor on the surface. Abwile once fought with Jia in the Battle of the Wilderness against Obsidian. Everyone in the empire knew about it, so old Cowan believed that the strength of this mysterious masked man was comparable to him. He was secretly shocked by his special ability. Jia nodded. This pair of children should be the only grandson and granddaughter left by Obsidian. This statement had ignored the concept of royal family and non-royal family. It directly pointed out the most critical identity. Redutan himself should be spared, but Lorey and his children were the remnants of Obsidian. It was reasonable for Jia to eradicate them. Lorey's body was already trembling. Old Cowan's face changed slightly, and he bowed deeply. Your Majesty, answer. Yes. Old Cowan bowed down and didn't dare to look up. He only had this pair of grandson and granddaughter. They were the only bloodline inheritance. For Redutan, who had reached the Demon Emperor realm, this pair of children was extremely precious. He was ecstatic when they were born. Moreover, Shek was a great demon with mutated bloodline. He was trained as the future heir of the Toro family. Once he was executed, it was not that old Cowan didn't think about taking risks, but this would face the encirclement and suppression of the entire empire. At that time, it was hard to say whether the children could be saved, and the Toro family would be deprived of their surname, or even annihilated. What old Cowan wanted the most was to take a risk and abandon the Rook to save the king. He wanted to strive to keep his grandson with the great demon bloodline. However, Jia's resolute attitude made old Cowan disappointed. This was actually not surprising. Kindness to the enemy was cruelty to oneself. Jia had already understood this truth when she first became the Lord. If she was soft-hearted, the Dark Moon would have collapsed long ago. In the beginning, Obsidian also had the intention to kill Crown Prince Grimm. If it weren't for Sarandi, George and others who tried to protect him and even threatened him with a mutiny, the Midnight Sun bloodline would have been cut off without any suspense. Then, Jia's eyes suddenly shot a murderous intention. Old Cowan was at the peak stage of the demon overlord, so he immediately sensed it. His heart beat violently. However, at this time, a terrifying magic fluctuation had wrapped him. Old Cowan felt like a frog being stared at by a poisonous snake. As long as he moved rashly, he would suffer a thunderous destructive blow. This is by no means the power of Aguile. This level almost jumped out of the scope of the Demon Overlord realm. Old Cowan was a veteran peak stage of the Demon Overlord. He had lived for thousands of years and experienced hundreds of battles, but now he rarely felt great fear. He suddenly thought of what his old friend Stiller said. In the decisive battle in the Leith Wilderness, there was an extremely powerful magician who easily defeated 2 dragons of the peak stage of the Demon Overlord. One of them was actually a black dragon known as the nemesis of the magicians. This time, it was this magician's means that Jia rushed to the capital to ascend the throne. It took less than an hour from the Dark Moon Estate to the capital. Is this the legendary space magic? Even space magic doesn't have such a terrifying effect. Too powerful. With this level of strength, I'm afraid he can already compete with Catherine the Great or Raisin the Great. Her Majesty Empress actually has such a powerhouse by her side. Old Cowan lost the last bit of struggle in his heart. He seemed to have aged twice in an instant. His eyes were full of despair. Jia slowly stood up from the throne. The murderous aura exuded from her body was even stronger. Her knuckles were a little white as she clenched her fists, as if she was suppressing some emotions. Even the little girl felt the chill. She only dared to tremble on the ground and didn't dare to move. Seeing that Jia was about to order, Aguile stepped forward at this moment. Your Majesty. Jia stopped, and Aguile whispered a few words. This time, Old Cowan and others were blocked by the magic, so they couldn't hear what he said. Jia's murderous aura gradually converged, and she showed a contemplative look. After a while, she nodded and said, Redutan. Yes. Lorey's identity is too sensitive. She is no longer suitable to be the legal wife, understand? Not suitable to be the legal wife? Could it be a concubine? Then the son and daughter. Redutan was taken aback, and he didn't know how to answer for a while. Old Cowan on the side felt that the terrifying magic fluctuation suddenly disappeared, and he answered excitedly. Understood. Even Obsidian's daughter, Lorraine, can be pardoned, then the pair of children can naturally be saved. I thought I can save the baby at most, but I didn't expect to get such a surprising result. Lorraine had already reacted, and she cried with joy. She quickly pulled Redutan and her daughter to kowtow continuously. Your Majesty is merciful! Jia glanced at the little girl with a complicated gaze and she said, Cowan and Redutan stay, the rest can leave first. Lorraine immediately retreated with her children. Old Cowan and Redutan bowed deeply. Thank you, Your Majesty. The Toro family will always remember Your Majesty's kindness. Mercy and weakness are often equated, and this is especially unsuitable for an emperor. You should know my style in the Dark Moon. I am by no means the kind of soft-hearted person. Jia said lightly. There is an old saying in the demon realm that there is never reaping without sowing. Your Majesty is merciful. My son and I are willing to die for Your Majesty. Hearing Old Cowan's words, Jia still had a non-committal cold look. Shenrei continued. Sir Cowan, we are also considered old acquaintances. There is one thing I can reveal to you. Now Her Majesty Jia has several special things in her hands. She needs a truly trustworthy family to implement and promote them to the whole country. At that time, not only the financial resources and national power of the empire will be greatly enhanced, but the family in charge will also gain huge benefits. Redutan and Old Cowan's heart moved at the same time. I'm afraid these words are not a bluff. The Dark Moon developed like this at the beginning. The night market, battle ball, hot pot restaurant, princess retail store, all of them are famous in the demon realm. The wealth is rolling in. The capital's families and various estates have been struggling financially after suffering from Obsidian's fundraising scandal. Shenrei's words were tantamount to sending a sumptuous banquet to a beggar who had been hungry for a few days. Old Cowan turned his consulting eyes to Jia, and Jia nodded slightly. Aguil is right. My requirements are very simple. Ability is secondary, loyalty is the first. Old Cowan glanced at Redutan, and Redutan understood. Without hesitation, he swore by the Toro family name that the entire family would be loyal to Jia. Jia's eyes finally eased. As long as the Toro family remains loyal, I will always regard them as my arms. I know that the power of the elder families is deeply rooted, but many people are too selfish and can't be controlled. The current situation of the empire is not optimistic. If the internal troubles are not eliminated as soon as possible, then there will inevitably be the danger of the empire's demise. Once the empire really declines, the power, interests, and even themselves that the elder families compete for will disappear. Old Cowan smiled bitterly. Actually, many people understand this truth, but once it is related to those complicated interests, they will take themselves as the first choice. The Toro family has been alienated by many elder families because of Lorraine. Now that they are the first to pledge loyalty to Your Majesty, they will definitely be excluded. If Your Majesty wants to reintegrate the elder families and the capital forces, you can refer to Catherine the Great's approach in the past. Start from the inside, make friends from afar and attack from near. Use both kindness and power to seize the typical example to strike thunderously. Jia said calmly. I am already doing this. Old Cowan's eyes moved. Your Majesty's deployment to Barocco and Faravit today? On the surface, the foreign enemies are now eyeing us covetously. Chapter 562. After Old Cowan left the palace, he said to Redutan earnestly, I know you still have some concerns in your heart, but since you have decided to be loyal to Her Majesty, don't waver. If you try to please both sides, you will not please both sides. When Her Majesty was the Lord of the Dark Moon, there were two major families in the Dark Moon. The Seifel family, who had always followed her, was now the top family of the Dark Moon. The Melon family, who opposed her, first surrendered, then they wavered. As a result, they were suppressed to the end and finally disappeared. Now Her Majesty is obviously restricted. In this case, the earlier we stand on the side, the better, even if we become the enemy of all the elder families. As long as Her Majesty can fully control the capital, then the Toro family's position will become more and more solid, and their interests will become greater and greater. Otherwise, there will be the danger of destruction. Redutan frowned. Father, do you think Her Majesty can fully control the capital? Even Prince Obsidian can't. So, now that Obsidian is dead, Her Majesty Jia is still alive, and she has been recognized by the sword of fallen angel. Old Cowan said solemnly. From the rise of the dark moon, it can be seen that although Her Majesty is young, her courage and means are far from comparable to Obsidian. I don't know why. I have a hunch that maybe Her Majesty Jia can really recreate the glory of the Lord of Midnight Sun and make the fallen angel empire the top powerhouse. Redutan nodded. His father, Cowan, has always had a very accurate vision. This was the case when he married Obsidian back then. Now, he has a clear view of the new Empress, Jia. He also attended the meeting during the day today. Jia's first proposal suffered a huge setback, but then she quietly transferred several representatives with the highest opposition to the front line to deal with the foreign enemy. This was an open conspiracy. After pledging allegiance today, Jia personally confirmed that she wanted to reshuffle the capital's forces at this critical time. Then, behind the open conspiracy would be the ruthless means and conspiracy. From this perspective, the timing of the Toro family's choice of side was quite good. Providing timely help and adding icing on the cake were two different concepts. What's more, the fate of his wife and a pair of children was still in the hands of Her Majesty the Empress. Whether it was for public or private reasons, he must side with Jia. Understood, Father. From now on, the Toro family will follow Her Majesty Jia wholeheartedly. This is worth the gamble. Redutan nodded. Imperial Palace Hall. The Toro family will be a starting point. Our next plan must be carried out quickly. Qinrui saw that Jia's purple eyes were a little absent-minded. Thinking of her previous emotional changes, he thought of something. What are you thinking about? That little girl? Jia raised her eyes and looked at the mask. There was a hint of gentleness in her purple eyes. I'm wondering if it's a good thing to keep a guy who can feel my heart by my side. If I didn't have this person by my side, it would be a pity, Qinrui said cheekily. Does that little girl remind you of your past self? Jia was silent for a moment. Actually, I once had a younger brother. In order to protect him, my father concealed everything after he was born, but I still couldn't hide it from the people with ulterior motives. Shortly after Alice was born, my mother and brother died in an accident. Even Alice didn't know the secret. Later, my father died of grief and indignation. Qinrui only knew that there was such a secret past. It turned out that Jia's father, Crown Prince Grimm, had been using Jia as a cover to secretly conceal and cultivate his son. He planned to be the true heir of the Dark Moon estate and the desire to recapture the empire, but he was still discovered. The so-called accident should be man-made. The mastermind behind it should be Obsidian. Under the pressure of General George and others, Obsidian couldn't directly attack Crown Prince Grimm and Jia. He could only control and suppress them, but the son born in secret was different. Since you keep it a secret, then I will destroy him secretly so that you can't say anything. In a sense, the eldest daughter, Jia, was a victim, to attract the enemy's attention. Therefore, when old Cowan and Redutan thought of sacrificing the little girl, Ling, to save the baby boy, Jia's always hidden emotions showed a strange fluctuation. More murderous intent was born from this. I don't know if I will really kill this pair of children. In fact, I'm weaker than I thought. Jia sighed. Sometimes, some kind of kindness will only bring more trouble in the future. An emperor must be ruthless. People have their own bottom line and persistence. It is because of this persistence that someone once said that I am stupid. They said that the kind of boring kindness will only make me weaker and weaker, and I will never become a real powerhouse. My answer is that I can become stronger and fearless because of some weaknesses. Not only that, but I also do the same. I have persisted until today, and I will continue to be so persistent in the future. Jia's eyes were a little more hazy. Fearless persistence. Chinrei scratched his head. I'm talking about myself. As for the Emperor, I have heard of the Emperor's technique and the way of the Emperor, but I don't understand it very well. The Emperor's technique should be a means of controlling and checking, manipulating people's hearts, manipulating power, and continuously consolidating the imperial power in the process of subordinates fighting with each other. The way of the Emperor means that the Emperor must judge the situation, make the best use of everything, make the best use of people, be broad-minded, and accept all kinds of things. He doesn't have to take care of everything personally, but he must achieve taking the impossible as the possible. Jia's eyes flashed as she listened. Although she didn't understand some of the words, she understood the general meaning. It was the first time she heard such a detailed theory about the Emperor. After thinking for a long time, she said, "You mean, with the way of the Emperor as the foundation and the Emperor's technique as the supplement, don't just focus on small details and ignore the overall situation? As long as the entire empire becomes stronger, the people will support, the army will serve, the officials and nobles will surrender, and those thieves will naturally be deterred and dare not act rashly. Then the Emperor will truly have the will and supreme authority of the entire empire?" "I didn't say that, but you are right." Chinrei sighed in his heart. This is the truth of one's position determines one's brain. You don't have to think about politics if you are not in the position. The Emperor's technique and the way of the Emperor are just some theories copied from his memory. But in the ears of a real Emperor like Jia, she can derive her own personal experience and understanding. A Grand Master shouldn't be an Emperor, right? A gentle smile appeared on Jia's face. The beauty of an iceberg melting made people's eyes light up. "I'm a little suspicious of you now," Chinrei replied with a straight face. "Actually, I'm a traveler from the Earth world. What I told you is the knowledge I got from another world. This secret has been hidden in my heart for a long time, and it's much better to say it now." A strange look flashed across Jia's face. "Is Earth another name for the surface world? Or should I call you His Royal Highness or His Majesty?" Chinrei shrugged. "It's not Arthur, it's Chinrei. Chinrei's Chin, Chinrei's Rei. Also, just call me Your Royal Highness, Royal Highness." "So, Your Royal Highness," Jia said with a smile, "can you answer a question for me? Who was the one who said that you were stupid and made you answer that way? Is it a beautiful lady? Do I know her? Or I don't know her?" A drop of sweat slid down Chinrei's face behind the mask. "A woman's intuition is sometimes more terrifying than wisdom. I want to know too." Another voice also sounded in the hall. Chinrei's back began to sweat. A certain Ms. Fake Natural Days, whom he found had been invisible and silent after releasing her magic power to frighten old Cowan. When she heard this topic, she immediately joined in excitedly. Jia nodded thoughtfully. "So, both Rala and I can be excluded? That tone shouldn't be like Athena and Kia." Beside Jia, Rala's beautiful figure gradually became clear. Although the fairy Miss Long and the new Her Majesty Empress had little contact in the Dark Moon, and their relationship was average, when encountering a situation that might be related to a foreign enemy, they coincidentally had a feeling of being united against a common enemy. The fairy Miss Long added, "I remember that Athena said that there was a stupid man who had a woman in the Shadow Empire a long time ago." Chinrei burst into tears. "Can your memory be any worse?" Jia looked suspicious. "Shadow Empire?" This was an interesting piece of news. Could it be a big shot from the Shadow Empire? Chinrei broke out in a cold sweat. Feeling the four scrutinizing eyes, he wanted to imitate the fairy Miss Long and pretend to be stupid. "What? I will definitely tell you about this in the future." Chinrei immediately shifted the target. "What we need to do now is to buy time. Rala, you protect Jia. I will go back to the Dark Moon immediately and bring a group of people over." "Humph!" Rala answered him with a snort. Jia nodded and said, "Rala, we need to communicate more to see how many secrets this guy still has to hide, especially about some women we don't know. For example, I have heard a song called The End of the World. Have you heard it?" "The End of the World?" Rala glanced at the guy who was already sweating profusely and shook her head. I haven't heard of it. I have heard of a top magic called Judgment Day. The fairy Miss Long deliberately emphasized the word, judgment, and the profusely sweaty man immediately evolved into the Genghis Khan man. Let's go and find a more pleasing place to talk. Jia ignored the Genghis Khan man. She took Rala's hand and walked inside. Chenrui was dumbfounded as he watched the two women walk away intimately while holding hands. His first reaction was that he was caught in a trap of his own making. Her Majesty Jia applied the Emperor's skill that she had just learned to his harem battlefield, attacking from afar and befriending close ones. I'm afraid that the future Crystal Palace will not be peaceful. The male protagonist must always be prepared for the worst-case scenario of blood sacrifice. This palace is too dangerous. Let's go back to the Dark Moon. Jia was too weak in the capital now. Even the guards were temporarily arranged by General George, so some of the Imperial Guards must be mobilized. Now the capital's intelligence agency also urgently needed the Dark Moon's people to master, and Isabella was the most suitable candidate. Sky and Tetanus had promised to come and help, so they should also leave as soon as possible. It was just that Rala's Rainbow Valley's space teleportation was not unlimited. The number of people who could pass at one time could not be too many. If Catherine was not hot-headed, the Shadow Empire would definitely send a new envoy to negotiate peace as soon as possible. There would definitely be demands, but it would never be as outrageous as what Lilith and Turtula proposed. Once the war ceased, Barocco and others who went out to support would also return to the capital. Therefore, Jia did not have much time left, so she must speed up the process. Chapter 563. Chenrui did not take the Rainbow Valley's passage. It would take at least 6 hours from the capital to the Rainbow Valley, and then to the Dark Moon. He had already set up a teleportation star point in the Dark Moon. Using the Stargate skill, he returned to the Dark Moon's house in the blink of an eye. When he returned to the house, he happened to see Dodo changing into his appearance, and teasing the little black horse with an apple in the yard. Although they had been together for a long time, the little black horse still ignored the slime. When Chenrui first appeared, the little black horse suddenly smelled its master's scent. It ran over with a cheer and rubbed against him affectionately. Chenrui touched the little black horse's head. With a flick of his fingers, 2 devil pomegs were thrown into the air. The little black horse cheered. Its 4 hooves bounced, and it had already jumped up. It nimbly caught the 2 devil pomegs and chewed them. Dodo on the side was jealous. He imitated Chenrui to flick his fingers, and the apple flew into the air. As a result, the little black horse simply faced it with extreme contempt. Dodo threw it a few times without any effect. He jumped up indignantly, and instantly turned into the appearance of the little black horse. He imitated that posture to catch the apple and ate it in big mouthfuls. Before chewing a few mouthfuls, the little black horse whose image right was violated gave the slime a lightning bolt without hesitation. As a result, Dodo returned to a translucent onion under the sizzling electric sparks. He trembled and couldn't move for a while. He kept crying ouch. Chenrui stroked the little black horse's mane, shook his head at the slime on the ground, and walked out. Dodo said, "Master! Wait a minute! Now the little princess is blocking the door." "Alice?" Chenrui frowned. "What's going on?" "I don't know why. I changed into Master's appearance, and occasionally appeared in the Dark Moon, but I was seen through by the little princess at a glance. She forced me to ask about Master's whereabouts, so I had to escape back. As a result, I was chased all the way by the little princess and blocked at the door. Did anyone see you when you were seen through?" Chenrui was shocked. The identity of the human financial officer was a good cover. If it was exposed because of Dodo, it would be troublesome. "I was dragged by the little princess to a secluded place to interrogate me. Then I turned into a demon hound and ran away. However, the little princess was very powerful. She chased me all the way to the door. If it weren't for the magic array at the door, she would have already rushed in." Chenrui secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The protector around Alice was the servant of the God-eating mask, Loki. The puppets of the God-eating mask retained consciousness and wisdom. In case of any situation, Loki should know how to deal with it. This incident gave him a wake-up call. How could the identity of Chunrui and Aguil exist at the same time? It was a problem. Having said that, the little lowly's sensing ability was indeed very powerful. Even if the incarnation of Aguil was in front of her, Chunrui had to be careful. Moreover, Alice once took Dodo to the Blue Lake mountain range to explore. She was also an acquaintance with the slime. It was not necessarily because Dodo was careless that she saw through him. Okay, leave the little princess's matter to me. You should show up as little as possible during this time. If you want to go out with my appearance, you must be accompanied by Delia, understand? Understood, master. The slime nodded quickly and wriggled over with a flattering face. Chunrui knew what this guy wanted when he saw Dodo's flattering look, so he threw a few devil fruits. Dodo didn't dare to turn into a little black horse again. His body suddenly stretched out two hands that were a few meters tall and effortlessly took the fruits in the air. He then took out a wine bottle like a magic trick and went to the back to taste it happily. If someone knew that the precious devil fruit was actually taken by Chunrui to a slime to go with wine, it would definitely cause countless jealousy and hatred. When Chunrui walked out of the house, he really saw a little lowly angrily blocking the gate. Seeing that Dodo finally walked out, the little lowly rushed over aggressively. As a result, she suddenly paused halfway. Her little nose twitched, and her big eyes flashed with a strange light. With an exaggerated jump, she pounced toward Chunrui with her teeth and claws bared. As a result, she successfully hung a koala on the back of Chunrui. Brother! You finally came out! The little lowly was extremely excited. I haven't seen the real you for a long time. The area of the house was very remote. Except for Loki, who was hidden in the dark, there was no one else, so Chunrui didn't use any tricks. He just explained. Actually, I have been advising Princess Jia's army some time ago. Now it should be Her Majesty Jia's army, so Dodo sometimes replaces me. Before he finished, the little lowly whispered in his ear. I know. I won't tell others. This is a little secret between us, right? Yes. Chunrui gently patted the little hand hanging in front of his neck, then he touched the blonde hair that was biting his ear. This somewhat doting action made the little lowly feel like a cat being caressed. She closed her eyes comfortably. The little lowly was 14 years old. Her every move was full of purity and vitality. For people who had some weird hobbies, it was a delicious meal, but for Chunrui, Alice was just a very cute sister, despite all kinds of mischief. After Sister defeated the big bad guy, Obsidian, she was still in the Dark Moon Palace yesterday, but she suddenly ascended the throne in the capital this morning, causing a sensation in the Empire and the entire demon realm. The Dark Moon is celebrating crazily today. Athena also became the substitute lord. Many things happened. Alice said excitedly. Did you follow Sister to the capital, and then you rushed back today? I couldn't find Teacher Rala yesterday and today. Did she use any magic to help you? Chunrui was surprised again. I didn't expect the little lowly to be so smart. She guessed almost right. As he was about to speak, the little lowly added mysteriously. I know, it's a secret. This will also be added to our little secret. Alice won't tell others. Chunrui nodded with a wry smile. Alice said something surprising again. Brother, I know that Sister needs help in the capital alone. You must be bringing someone to the capital this time. Can you bring me along? Absolutely not now. Let's wait for a while. Chunrui shook his head quickly. At this time, Jia had just settled down, and the capital's situation was not stable. If Alice went, it would only add to the chaos and make Jia more distracted. The little lowly's mouth suddenly flattened. If you don't bring me along, I will expose your secret. Okay. She really is a black-bellied lowly. Once she is not satisfied, she immediately turns hostile and threatens me. Didn't you say that it's just a little secret between us? Chinray deliberately emphasized the word we. Facing the little loli who turned hostile quickly, he had no choice but to use the charm trick. This sentence made the little loli's face blush, but she didn't let go. Women have a strong desire to confide, especially a woman with a broken heart. She can't keep a secret. A woman with a broken heart. Chinray only felt that the thunder was rolling. He could guess that this was the line of a certain bad psychology book even with his eyes closed. Look, what did I see? There is an Alice hanging around the boss' neck? Only the miser bodyguard called Chinray. Boss. Olivius. The little loli waved excitedly to the miser bodyguard. Judging from this familiarity, it was not the first time they met, and their relationship was good. Except for Athena, most of the little loli's good friends had one thing in common, that was, flat breasts. This might be the criteria for a certain loli to choose friends. The little loli then showed a puzzled expression and asked Chinray, "Are you Olivius, boss?" Olivius once complained in front of Alice about how the boss was rich and unkind, how insidious and cunning he was. He cheated her to sign an extremely unequal contract, and a series of evil crimes such as not paying her salary and deducting her hundreds of millions of black crystal coins. At that time, the little loli and the miser bodyguard denounced the boss who had never mentioned his name with indignation. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be Chinray. Chinray glanced at Olivius and put the little loli down. "You know, I'm the financial officer who manages money. She is hired. It must be because Olivius is too greedy for money, so she said that you exploited her." Although the little loli was not satisfied with being put down, she immediately established a positive image of Chinray in her heart, and her new friend, Olivius, became a greedy old woman in her brother's storytelling series, The Fisherman and the Goldfish. Isabella appeared behind Olivius. She should have received the news that Alice blocked the door and wanted to get rid of this troublesome loli. Now that Jia was far away in the capital, without a sister who could suppress the empire's little princess, the little loli began to become lawless. Olivius didn't realize that she had become a negative image. She came to Chinray with a smile. "Boss, are you going to take me to the capital to help? But my expenses in the past few days are too big. I have spent all the money to entertain my friends. Can I get a few months' salary and benefits in advance?" The miser bodyguard had now learned to take advantage of the situation to raise conditions. Maybe she was influenced by Isabella. Humph. Alice unceremoniously exposed Olivius' lie. "I have been paying for the guests these days." "You didn't spend anything." Olivius calculated seriously. "Didn't I treat you to a marshmallow at 2 p.m. the day before yesterday?" Alice also calculated seriously. "That was what you snatched from others. You didn't spend any money yourself. That guy wanted to molest you, but you snatched all his money and clothes, and he only gave me a marshmallow. Later, I didn't eat it, and you ate it yourself. I treated you to hot pot, barbecue, steamed dumplings, cake, pudding, fruit wine in the past few days. Mom said that frugality is a virtue." Olivius swallowed and said, "But most of the people here know me, so it is difficult to succeed. Why don't we go to the capital together to do a few big things? We will specifically target the ignorant guys. We will split the money we snatch equally, and you will get 1%? No, 1/10, 000? 10,000, a lot. There were already beads of sweat on Chinray's forehead. "So this is the purpose of Miss Blacklong's initiative to go to the capital? And the proportion of the loot?" A lot. Is the denominator okay? Why don't you say 1 in a billion? However, the frugal Olivius still looked distressed. When Alice heard the keyword, capital, she immediately ignored other things and nodded desperately in cooperation. Okay. Chinray. Isabella.